Alright. Says there's someone watching. Okay, so is anyone watching?
Fighting for immune health, digestion.
Well, hello again, theorists. We have a party planned today, and it's all for you. So, are you ready for round 2? Well, are ya? It's too late to turn back now. Get ready for a surprise in 3, 2, 1.
What's he doing? It's just his intro. Beat extra.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where did you know that Funtime Freddy was almost German?
What?
Jawohl, check it out.
Hello, little children. Glad to see you back again. Come closer. I'll sing a song for you.
How wild is that? Forget Freddy Fazbear, it's Freddy Fuzzbar. Calling it right now, FNAF 5 gave us sister location, FNAF 6 gives us international expansion. So, this is it. The end of an era. My last FNAF lore theory until a new game gets released. Makes me kinda sad, actually. So let's make it a good one as we set out to finish the job that we started 3 whole years together. And spoiler alert, purple guy? It's not the phone guy. Believe me, I tried. So of the 5 Aftons, last time we had killed off 2. Mother and daughter who go on to become Baby and Ballora. Afton's daughter getting clawed results in the immediate closure of Circus Baby's Pizza World, leading the company to retire the creepy, rosy-cheeked characters deep underground where memories sleep. But now let's talk about one question I haven't addressed yet.
The puppet also has that. It's alright, Doggo. You saw my first one. I started a new one because I had to restart my PC because for some reason it was just being very laggy. And I don't know why that was. I think it's good now because it hasn't said anything. Because I can see stream health and it says 100% good, excellent connection size, and I got stream fixed now. So hopefully,
Where is Chica in all this? For the
this should be better.
first time in these games, one of the core 4 animatronics was just gone. That seems significant, right? And it is. I joked earlier about FNAF Lederhosen location, but it touches on an element of these games that we tend to brush aside. That there's a business element running through all of them. Corporate doublespeak and liability talk coming from Phone Guy, parent companies in the form of Fazbear Entertainment, franchising with sister location. So what if Chica is missing from Circus Baby's gang because she was her own independent mascot at the time? It's not just wild speculation either. In the Scott Games source code leading up to sister location's release, we got all sorts of hints in the form of animatronic maintenance schedules. But mixed in there was a reference to something surprising. Chica's Party World, mentioned by name. Definitive proof that the character was the mascot of another business existing at the same time as Circus Babies, which was also a client of Afton Robotics. Chica isn't in sister location because she isn't a part of the family yet. She's still a solo act, but we know by FNAF 4 she's clearly a part of the Fredbear and Friends lineup. So it would seem that Fazbear Entertainment grew by merging with or buying out the other animal-themed restaurants in the area, with Chica being the last addition to the crew and why she's a part of the series from here on out. So no, theorists, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't just Scott trying to reduce the amount of creepy poultry-themed fan art. Let's be real here for a second. Bibs aren't sexy. I'm just saying it now. Calling it like I sees it. So Fazbear Entertainment decides to go all in on the animal-themed robots because the whole clown thing was just a stupid idea. I mean, seriously, William, do some market research. Americans are more afraid of clowns than global warming. Know your consumer, man. Anyway, in FNAF 4, Fredbear's expanded to have himself some friends, and has become so popular that they're in full sellout mode, complete with plushies, toys, a TV show, and the ever-popular item, masks. Get them now, because I hear they're selling like a god church. None of this would exist if this were truly the first location of a local pizza chain, confirming that this location in FNAF 4 is not where it all started like many have been assuming. What we're seeing here is something else, presumably what the TV says. Fredbear and Friends, a hybrid restaurant of the old Fredbear characters and the new spin-off ones where every character has their own spring-lock suit. Notice that the FNAF 4 Nightmare animatronics all have 5 fingers. The only other animatronic to have that feature, Springtrap. 5 fingers because the humans have to wear the suits. Which
yeah, why do those got 4?
In this franchise. Is this 1983 or 1987. The bite at the birthday party makes it seem like it's 1987, but the TV says that it's 1983. Never before has so much nerd rage been prompted by discussion over trademark dates. Rage that lives on to this day, but now I can finally bring home to the storm. This is 1983. We know
That's
this
right.
based
That's
on
right.
a
That
recent
was.
Reddit post Scott made on the subject of whether or not he's ever retconned his story. Quote, "The truth is that I've done one actual retcon in the series, although I'm not going to say where it was. There have been other times, however, when my
Sorry,
original
Doggo.
intentions didn't come across clearly. In those instances, I make a point to clarify in the next game. I used sister location to clear up a misconception from FNAF 4." End quote. Reading this, the obvious misconception from FNAF 4 was the year the events of the game took place, which, true to his word, he clarified via sister location and the private room camera code of 1983. 1983. When Michael Afton revisits his father's control room decades after the fact, he sees that all along William had been surveilling their family home using cameras that were password protected by one of the most sorrowful dates of his life. Regardless, neglectful father William participates in the worst Bring Your Son to Work Day program ever by taking his traumatized son to a restaurant filled with robots he's afraid are gonna scoop him. And solidly in the no-help column is his older brother who taunts him mercilessly for his fears. The story comes to a climax when the brother's teasing goes too far, getting his younger brother chomped at his own birthday party. At the end of the game, William, through his psychic friend Fredbear observation plushies, patent pending, promises to put his son back together, except he's too late. We hear a hospital flatline faintly in the background as the cutscene ends, meaning that the child dies. That's far from where his story ends. He appears in every other FNAF game because even though Daddy fails to put him back together, miraculously, the crying child finds his way into becoming the ghostly Golden Freddy. For proof as to why, let's speed things up.
Remember what Scott said in his Reddit post? He tries to
Not this again.
game, and between FNAF 3 and FNAF 4, there's a point he made sure to clarify: the Happiest Day minigame. Notice the masks across the two games, not just symbolic imagery, but a direct reference to the masks worn during the crying child's failed birthday: Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica. The restaurant layout is also the same, just mirror flipped, with 3 party tables decorated with green, yellow, red, purple, and blue balloons. And it's a birthday party as evidenced by the cake. The puppet is recreating
He's yapping so fast.
child, and the mask that the crying child is seen wearing, Golden Freddy. But that's not all. The crying child gets taken by Death, aka Nightmare, an animatronic who just so happens to have an inverted Golden Freddy color palette, yellow hat and tie with a black body as opposed to a yellow body with black accessories. Coincidence? I think not. It's also worth noting that Nightmare is one of only 2 canon animatronics to have a jump scare that's a static image with strange noises that crashes the game. The other, Golden Freddy.
Which leaves us with 2, William and Michael, father and son. Purple guy and other purple guy. The rest of the timeline is the story of a serial killer father and the son who's following behind, retracing William's steps to undo his father's cruel work and free the spirits of the dead children. This next bit we're all pretty familiar with since it's based on evidence from Phone Guy. The bite of 83 causes spring locks to get discontinued. William, acting as a technician across all the Fazbear restaurants, is responsible for handling the recalled suits and starts using the Golden Bonnie outfit to lure children into the secret safe.
Yeah, isn't Pink Guy
restaurant will he'll be safely
like Henry?
camera. He first strikes on June 26th at the FNAF 1 location. This murder, dubbed the Missing Children's
I had to
Incident,
have
gets the place
those.
shut down, but results in Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy getting newly
backspace.
children to power their engines. Those animatronics, along with the puppet, get shifted to the FNAF 2 location along with some new toy robots linked to a criminal database to prevent a mass murder from happening again. Even some old favorites get pulled out of retirement, specifically Balloon Boy. And with that full roster, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has its grand reopening. Now posing as a security guard, William, with his spring lock crank in hand, not phone, strikes again, causing the place to get investigated. William flees the scene, leaving the day shift security guard position open. Jeremy Fitzgerald moves up to fill the empty slot, but gets himself bit by the agitated animatronics in an event that comes to be known as the Bite of 87, an event that forces the company to cease any free-roaming activities of the animatronics from that day forward. The toy animatronics get scrapped for just sucking at spotting a child murderer, and the old robots get stored back at the original FNAF 1 location. At this point, though, William knows that these things are alive and angry at him, so he tries to dismantle them using the safe room as his cover. And it would have worked out too if it weren't for those meddling kids, or at least their meddling spirits, because he didn't calculate that the spirits could live on without the animatronic shells. He tries to defend himself against against these ghosts by ducking into his trusty murder suit, but his haste coupled with the moisture of the room causes the spring locks to fail and Afton to get skewered inside of the big yellow bunny. The company, trying to save face and, let's be honest, their stock value, covers up William's crime spree by sealing off the safe room with the dying William Afton, now Springtrap, inside. I know, but Michael might be Springtrap. We're getting there. The management instructs all Fazbear employees to behave as though those safe rooms never existed, and another Afton falls victim to a horrible fate. Only this time, he absolutely, totally deserved it. But now let's look at the final Afton, Michael. His story begins with the main gameplay of Sister Location, where Mike Afton, who we learn looks a lot like his father,
They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
is sent by dear old dad to put his sister back together. A promise that William makes to apparently a lot of his kids. This request of Michael presumably happened some years earlier when Mike was still a child or before Afton ran away to escape murder charges, as implied by him saying,
I'm going to come find you.
Mike succeeds in saving Baby, but gets himself scooped in the process, having his innards replaced with ennards. As we see throughout the
That's crazy, doggo.
cutscenes, this causes his body to slowly decay, turning purple, until Ennard abandons ship to look for a fresher body that'll draw less suspicion. Michael miraculously survives his Ennard enema, and here's where all sorts of puzzle pieces start to fall together. First, we know his name is Michael, but that he also goes by Mike, as shown by his name tag on hand unit. This immediately connects us to FNAF 1's Mike Schmidt, the original security guard, a guy who eventually gets fired for tampering with the animatronics and his odor. It was the first game in the series, so we all thought it was a funny joke, but now we know better. Scott doesn't do jokes. Not only does the name Mike match, but a rotting flesh sack with no innards would definitely be pretty smelly. And if, true to Sister Location, Mike's mission is to free the spirits of children killed by his dad, he would absolutely be guilty of tampering with the animatronics. It even provides us for an explanation as to why the animatronics would be trying to kill him in the first place. We hear it in Sister Location. He looks just like his father, which, man, William, if your face looks like a rotting corpse, might be time to consider getting some plastic surgery. But if all that wasn't enough, we can even tie it in with Golden Freddy's behavior in the game. Anytime Golden Freddy appears in FNAF 1, he's accompanied with the flashing text of, "It's me." As we just saw, Golden Freddy contains the spirit of the crying child, Mike's brother. So the "It's me" is one brother speaking to another brother, making him aware that he's here, he's present, and in need of spiritual release. Now, knowing that Mike Afton and Mike Schmidt are one and the same, rewind to FNAF 2 and the character Fritz Smith, a security guard fired on his first day on the job for what? Odor and tampering with the animatronics. Coincidence? Absolutely not. Scott
No
doesn't
reason for
do
that.
coincidences. Michael Afton is literally going location to location, undoing the sins of his father's past and stinking up the places as he do, like Michael says at the end of Custom Night.
I'm going to come find you.
And find him he does at Fazbear Fright.
But before we get to the end of the timeline, let's address the elephant in the room.
Oh my god, speeding it up again.
The killer, and Michael is clearly shown to be purple in the custom night, so wouldn't that make him the killer? No, as much as I hate to say it, there are actually two purple guys, but only one real purple guy. Admittedly, I left that purposely vague for dramatic effect, but let me explain. Or better yet, let FNAF World explain. In it, you recruit a familiar-looking purple sprite onto your team, and he says this: "Don't confuse me with the actual purple guy. I'm just a game sprite." And there's the difference. One of these characters is physically purple. That character is Michael, and the other is just a placeholder on the screen. A sprite representing a shadowy figure who, because the background of the minigames happens to be black, had to be colored differently, and that color was purple. But you don't even have to get that meta. It's made pretty darn clear in Sister Location's intro that William is the one who built the animatronics intended to capture kids, whereas Michael is established as the one who's trying to save them. Even the timeline supports this. The murders date back all the way to Fredbear Family Diner in the 70s with a guy who's old enough to drive. There's no chance that Michael, the son, would be the right age to be the original purple guy. And lastly, if you believe that Michael Afton is also Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith, as the evidence suggests, then the phone guy calls give you an alibi. Phone guy is talking to you about other security guards being investigated for murder, which implies that you yourself are not guilty.
Mike's efforts to atone for his family's past
I can tag the game
By
there.
game, we see him piecing together the family reunion. Sister Location saw him free both Ballora and Baby. Then in FNAF 3's Fazbear Fright, Afton's younger brother, now in the form of Golden Freddy, receives peace via the Happiest Day minigame. Even the spirits inside Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica get exorcised by Mike, which is why the good ending of FNAF 3 shows 4 empty, unlit animatronic heads. That's also why, come the main gameplay of FNAF 3, the only animatronic that's still active in real life is Springtrap. Mike has been successful at appeasing every other one of the spirits, leaving him alone with dear old dad.
I'm going to come find you.
He gets a job as security guard of Fazbear Fright, and shortly after, the creator...
What are you talking about, Blackbeard Gamer?
FNAF father spring trapping around inside. Mike sets the place on fire to finish off his killer dad once and for all, because seriously, did you really think that building just spontaneously caught on fire? Fires in fictional stories always have a dramatic purpose, and Mike would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for that meddling father, who in both the FNAF 3 newspaper clippings and Sister Location's special ending is shown to have survived the fire and is now undoubtedly
Oh my god, dude, it's
bloodthirsty
the
than
music
ever.
for
The end? Question mark.
that one science guy.
Hallelujah. The craziest part of all this is when you actually stop and look at the story, there really isn't a need for FNAF 6. Outside of the return of Springtrap cliffhanger and revealing what's inside the box, yeah, remember that? Everything else pretty much has an answer. Sure, there are still parts of the tale that could be more fleshed out, like the origins of the puppet or what happens after Ennard gets ejected from Mike, but at this point, all the characters have completed their story arcs. The family is reunited and the spirits are all at peace. It's actually pretty poetic. It took nearly 20 theories and literally weeks of my life studying these breadcrumbs to get there, but we did it. We got to a solution that fit together practically all of the loose ends, and that's pretty darn special. Thank you for being a part of that journey with me. It's been an incredible ride. I have no doubt that this isn't 100% correct, but you know what? It's an explanation I'm happy with. One that I feel provides a sense of closure to the series, and one that I'm going to let stand as my final word on the 5 games worth of series lore until a new installment.
Come on, we didn't even get to see it.
Crap, a new installment that just so happened to get teased immediately after last week's part 1. Don't go getting predictable on me. Calling it now just so I can avoid the inevitable prediction theory. It's an installment that looks like it's going to be taking yet another step
Y'all are weird in
to
chat.
tell the origin stories of the puppet. Notice how the sprites are the exact same as the FNAF 2 Give Cake minigames, where the first child gets murdered and the puppet pops out of the screen. Also notice that the rainbow design is a direct callback to the aesthetic of 70s technology, which is when Fredbear Family Diner and the first murder would take place. Lastly, the source code on Scott Games keeps saying, what is paragraph 4? Well, paragraph 4 could be relating to a lot of things, but the one thing that jumps out at me is that as soon as my episode went up, this teaser came out. Paragraph 4 of my episode last week happened to be about William Afton's first murders. But before I end all this, let me give the hardest of hardcore fans one more deep dive on the whole Will Trap versus Mike Trap debate. Let's speed it up. Most hardcore fans believe Mike is the purple guy currently in the Springtrap suit, and it's easy to see why. His voice is modified with an electronic effect in the custom night ending. Springtrap pops up at the end of Mike's final words.
I'm going to come find you.
And the purple guy sprite who ends up in the suit is seen releasing kids from their animatronics. However, these are easily explained away. We've heard Springtrap talk before, or should I say gurgle before in FNAF 3. And Mike's voice is very different from Springtrap's. Springtrap popping up on I'm going to come find you could very easily just be a visual storytelling element where Mike is stating his mission to track his father down. We visually see that he did it, but oh no, cliffhanger, Dad ain't dead. And we already talked about how William will be dismantling the animatronics to try and stop their attack. So it seems like a pretty balanced debate, or at least it does until you look at the timeline. Based on order of events, William inside Springtrap is undeniable. Whoever is working as Night Guard and Fazbear Fright can't just be some random guy off the street. It's someone who has seen both the FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 animatronics, considering he's having hallucinations of Mangle, Balloon Boy, and the puppet, as well as the first generation version of Chica. The only person who looked at both of those places outside of William Afton himself is Michael Afton. Also, we hear that Circus Baby's rentals appeared in the wake of Freddy's Pizza being closed, but the safe rooms were sealed with Springtrap inside while Freddy's Pizza was still open. That's why there's a whole series of phone die tapes telling employees about
Alright, see you, Spice.
and then, oh wait, no, we're closing them down, pretend like they never existed.
I can't hear what you guys saying.
If Mike were truly Springtrap, that would mean he never would have had the opportunity to get souped and turn purple since Circus Baby's rentals wouldn't have opened at that point, and he would have been trapped in the walls of the FNAF 1 location in the Springtrap suit. Lastly, if Mike were Springtrap, then who set fire to Fazbear Fright? I guarantee that fire was intentional. It was meant to finish off the last awful pieces of Freddy's legacy, and Mike's really the only one who has that sort of motive. William is the established killer who would be cocky, thinking that he got away from the spirits by hiding in his golden bodysuit, which seems very counter to how Mike behaves. Oh yeah, and let's also not forget Scott confirmed our theories on the killer being in Springtrap years ago. If all of that doesn't convince you, hell, I look forward to watching your research. Alright, 12 pages later, I'm finally ready to close this thing out. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Now don't get mad at me when the new game comes out in a few weeks and everyone tells me to do another theory about it. Hey, and a very special thanks to Kellen Goff, the voice of Funtime Freddy, who recorded that incredible intro. Please do me a favor and follow him on Twitter at Kellen Goff for all the latest on the projects he's working on, Freddy included, but also stuff like Hearthstone, which is really awesome. Also, if you want more FNAF action, watch me and
No, Matt Pat.
TSA PreCheck has always been a great option for travelers who want to save time and enjoy smooth.
And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
Jeez, Scott. I know we didn't get along all the time, but condemning me to hell seems a bit extreme. Seriously, though, can we turn on some air conditioning here or something? It's getting a bit warm in here.
I got my air conditioning on.
Me because I'm wearing my snuggly new Game Theory merch.
Matt Pat, get out of here, bro.
The hoodie with them shirts with the your face with your user because complete with Game Theory line or like my we have Game Theory every order.
Gang.
Really special. Only 100 orders will come packaged with special event and less caloric, but I have way too long last time to get to you, so we've partnered with a new
That
team
hurt.
to ensure
Just
that
smashed
you get
my
your orders faster and
thermos
with
against
way
my
better
teeth.
customer
Yo,
service.
can you like?
So make sure to send us a picture of let's talk about the end of this channel's most
Oh,
popular
it took you 3 minutes.
franchise. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where let's just take a collective moment and get this all out of the way. Say it with me now. Another FNAF video. You said the last one was gonna be your last. Yeah, I know, but I also said this. Now, don't get mad at me when the new game comes out in a few weeks and everyone tells me to do another theory about it. And true enough to form, that's exactly what happened. I released my final two-parter theory on the subject, and exactly 1 month later, FNAF 6, disguised under the fan-game-esque name of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, gets released. Now, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if you all thought that Scott and I were the same person. Come to think of it, you have never seen us in the same room together at the same time. Anyway, the game came out over 2 months ago, and ever since I've
him and Scott don't even look the same.
asking me for the theory. Over 10 people in the last week alone stopped me on the street and asked for a FNAF episode. And that's not even mentioning all the emails I've gotten in that time. So for Ben, Steven, Phil, Cassie, Matt, Lucas, Sarah, Alex, Matt number 2, and NBA Rookie of last year, Carl Anthony Towns, that's no joke actually, as well as everyone who has sent in something requesting an episode on FNAF, this one, and potentially one squeezed between this one and the next theory, and maybe even a third one down the line at some point, those are all for you. Now, FNAF 6 was a very different game from any of the ones that came before. Not because it had a weird roller coaster tycoon-esque metagame connecting all the security camera maintenance you've come to know and tolerate from this series, but because it's much more explicit than usual. This game has a lot of talking, accompanied by clear visual storytelling to reinforce what you're hearing, meaning that a lot of the major plot points of this game are fairly easy to understand, which has got to be like a first for the entirety of this franchise. FNAF 6 is filled with a sense of finality. It's clearly meant to tie up all the loose ends and serve as the last game of the series, or let me be clear, the last part of the series covering what I'm gonna call the Purple Guy saga. It's like Dragon Ball Z up in here. A saga which begins with a series of murders that result in animatronics coming to life, continues with the Afton family meeting with a series of terrible fates, and ends with the spirits of everyone involved getting closure, one way or another. Because this game feels much more obvious in its story, many online theorists have chosen to focus on the major story beats, actively ignoring the game's more unusual bits, the wrinkles that don't quite fit in cleanly. But it's in those wrinkles that we find answers to some of the longest held questions of the franchise, and the clues that we need to finally put the whole puzzle together. So stick with me and prepare to get a little wrinkly like a
Except for it
tool left in
wasn't.
the bathtub for too long, because while today is certainly a theory, or rather multiple theories all in one episode, it's also me trying to open the door to you guys, equipping you with the information necessary to discuss the final points lingering around the edge of this mysterious franchise, finally closing the book on the Purple Guy saga. Now, before I get to the deep lore here, let me quickly run through the major reveals of this game just to make sure that we're all working with the same understanding. In the aftermath of FNAF 3's Happiest Day minigame, the spirits of Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Golden and Freddy have all been put to rest, which left only the lingering threads of Springtrap with William Afton inside, Ennard with Baby inside, Michael Afton, I'm a living corpse who used to have robot tentacles inside, and the puppet with nothing inside. Prior to the release of this game, Scott's two websites, scottgames.com and fnafworld.com, were talking to each other in their source code, a conversation which showed Baby and Ennard getting into a fight, and Baby basically getting voted out of the tribe, which is why in this new game the two are once again separate entities. Ennard in this game assumes the form of Molten Freddy, which, adding in this game's other new edition of Rockstar Freddy, brings the total number of different Freddy forms across the entire series to 12.
12.
12 different Freddys alone. And you'll wonder why this game is confusing to talk about. Baby, meanwhile, becomes Scrap Baby, complete with a lobster claw and roller skates, and Scott was like, whee, it's my final game.
Alright,
I'm
bro.
making designs whatever the hell I want to. Springtrap now has a cleft chin, and heck, why not? There's a weird black bear named Lefty, because why the heck not throw a 13th bear onto the pile? Throughout the game, you're not only tasked with handling the best characters ever, featuring such standouts as Number 1 Crate and Mr. Hugs, but every night you'll find one of your old friends out in that back alley, and it's your task per paragraph 4 of your employment contract to salvage that animatronic, bringing them into your establishment.
If you are playing this tape, that means that not only have you been checking outside at the end of every shift, as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4.
Fast forward a couple nights to the true ending of the game, where we learn that the whole pizzeria was just a trap made to lure the stray animatronics into the same place at the same time, so that they and the horrors of Freddy Fazbear's could be finished off once and for all in a final blaze of glory. Even though that technically happened once before in FNAF 3 and Springtrap survived. But hey, who's counting? Me, but you know, that's what I do. And who of all people set up this trap? What is the identity of this mysterious cassette man? Well, the first clue we get is actually in the closing monologue.
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
It's an old friend of William Afton's, Henry, no last name given. And if that lack of a last name sounds familiar, well, it should. I mentioned this guy a lot during that
Didn't he
arc
kill
period
himself?
where I used information from the books for my sister location theories. In the book series, he's the animatronic genius who partnered with William to create the Freddy bots. And this isn't only speculation. One of the secret endings, the insanity ending, proves that this is Henry. If during the game you buy this freak show egg creature for way too much money, it causes your computer's power button to switch from green to blue. If you then hold the power button like you're starting the computer in safe mode, it causes a hidden recording to play. An audio tape that happens to be labeled HRY. Henry. But the insanity ending shows us even more than just a light connection back to the novels. As Henry talks about his regret over ever helping William create the animatronics and his plan to lure everyone together to finish this off once and for all, we're shown a series of secret blueprints. Most of them provide a bit more detail into how this wacky world works. We're shown that Afton's scooper from Sister Location functions by infusing things with, for lack of a better term, soul energy, what Afton calls remnant. This is how Michael was able to survive as a purple corpse post his Ennard enema. We also see that Molten Freddy, formerly Ennard, still contains the souls of Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy, and that our mission under paragraph 4 is to specifically collect and destroy the remnant once and for all. Remnant is destroyed by overheating, hence the fire at the end. We even learn the detail that literally no one was asking for: how to simulate children. The RASC, or Remote Activated Simulated C I'm assuming stands for child, simulates body temperatures of 98.6 degrees and then runs around making child noises. Hence how you're able to lure all the murderous animatronics around in this game, and also probably FNAF 3. But what's most surprising is the final blueprint. Lefty, that oddball black bear that just showed up in this game. A bear that, according to its acronym, is programmed to lure something by emitting a bracelet code and then encapsulate it with a combination of lullabies and controlled shocks. A bear suit that was made by Henry that has the sole purpose of capturing none other than the puppet. You can even tell it's already accomplished its goal if you look closely at this rare screen you sometimes get when you boot up the game. The signature striped arm of the puppet showing through the Lefty animatronic. But it doesn't stop there. If you buy and then play the security puppet minigame 3 times over the course of your week in the restaurant, you see a child trapped outside the pizzeria wearing a bracelet. The puppet, a security device of all things, is trained to respond to her specific bracelet code, green. so it chases her outside only to find her dying in the alley. Short-circuiting from the rain that's pouring down around it, it lies down next to her and the two fuse into one. And this lines up with exactly what we hear in the game's true ending.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you and for those you have carried in your arms.
Henry's daughter, the first victim, is the puppet, the one who gave life to everyone that came after her and gave peace to their souls in FNAF 3. Finally confirmed after I'd been predicting it for 3 years since the release of FNAF 2. So there you have it. Henry from the books is now canon in the games. His daughter is the puppet trapped inside Lefty. Everyone, including Michael, dies in the FNAF 6 fire, and Baby's name is established as Elizabeth in Henry's closing monologue. It's all pretty cut and dry. I mean, if you want to get really deep, the images on the walls in the alley are actually blurry contracts. You can tell based on the bullet points and oddly short paragraphs, which I have seen more than enough time to identify at a glance. And all of that relates back to that theme of what is paragraph 4, which has been Scott's calling card for this game. The creepy imagery of the ventriloquist and clown that you also see in the alleyway isn't teasing some new game like a lot of people have been assuming, but rather it's just an artistic recreation of the Afton family. William is the ventriloquist. The dummy, who looks exactly like him, represents Michael Afton, who, as we know, looks just like his father, just a smaller version of him, and has to parrot back a lot of what his father tells him to do. Elizabeth, aka Baby, is the clown, for fairly obvious reasons, and the bear on the leash is just Crying Child, a child who is trapped and held back by his family, who ultimately dies in the hands of Fredbear. FNAF 6 even offers explanations for the inappropriate costumes that were mentioned by the phone guy calls from FNAF 3. Yeah, you remember those?
Until replacements arrive, you will be expected to wear the temporary costumes provided to you. Keep in mind that they were found on very short notice, so questions about appropriateness/relevance should be deflected.
They're the mediocre Melodies crew from this game, which also happen to match up perfectly to the other masks that you see during FNAF 3's Happiest Day minigame. A green one is Happy Frog, the pink one is Pig Patch, Mr. Hippo is purple, there's some blue one for some reason, and then Orville the elephant is the orange one with the long nose. But for as much as FNAF 6 explains, and it explains a lot pretty explicitly, it leaves open 3 huge questions. 3 questions that no one has been able to answer for the past 2 months until now. Or at least I'm pretty confident that I can answer 2 of those questions. For the third one, I'm gonna need your help. Now, you don't need too much to get that true ending. You just salvage all the animatronics and survive all the nights. It's basic FNAFing 101. But there's another layer to this game. An ending that goes one step beyond just the base storyline. The Lore Keeper ending, where things start to get complicated in a hurry. To unlock it, you have to play 3 specific minigames through to completion: Security Puppet, Fruity Maze, and Midnight Motorist. Security Puppet was easy to explain. The others, though, are where the questions start to pop up. In Fruity Maze, the game starts to become more and more unstable as you progress through the 3 levels. By the end of the 3rd stage, collectibles have transformed into slaughtered dogs and burial flowers. Your on-screen avatar is trailing bloody footprints, and the blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl reflected in the arcade screen is crying. And for good reason, since standing behind her is none other than the purple guy, dressed in his golden best. Now, this one's confused a lot of online theorists, but in my opinion requires some process of elimination to solve. FNAF 6 is all about tying up loose ends, right? And at this point, the puppets set the souls of FNAF's core 4 of Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica, as well as Golden Freddy free in the Happiest Day minigame. Baby, the sister location crew, Springtrap, and the puppet are all taken care of by Henry in the true ending of FNAF 6, and the 3 toy animatronics from FNAF 2, which do seem to legitimately be tied to a security database, are scrapped at the end of their game. So who or what does that leave? Mangle. But I'm not saying that the girl is Mangle, I'm telling you it's her dog. Mangle is William Afton's first successful experiment with Remnant, Dog Remnant. Which, now that I say it out loud, sounds a lot more like dog duty than Miracle Soul formula, but let me explain. We obviously see that the girl's crying, but it's not because she's scared. We actually see that Will Trap is able to have a normal conversation with her, saying, "He's not dead. He's still alive. Follow me." She's crying because her dog died, as represented on the screen. And that's the he that William's referencing here. Your dog is not dead, he is still alive. And we have proof that William isn't lying about this either. It's an odd detail that I've never talked about, which is pretty incredible that after so many of these darn videos, I'm still pulling out random factoids to piece into this puzzle. But in the Save Them minigame from way back in FNAF 2, you're in a building filled with 5 dead kids and Purple Guy. All the other animatronics are stationary except for one, Mangle. Alive and well, and unlike every other animatronic in the entire series, roaming around on all 4s. Even though Mangle technically walks around on 3 legs, but you get the point. A design decision so important that we see Scott keep it in Mangle's quest from FNAF 3 as well. Mangle is alive without the puppet giving him gifts or giving him life. So how is the Mangle animatronic moving in this moment? William. Experimenting with animals and Remnant. And as we see in the Fruity Maze, William uses the fact that the dog is still alive to lure this girl to her death, allowing her to be reunited with her dog forever. For more proof, notice that the dead dog in the Fruity Maze minigame is actually missing an eye, a detail that we see a chair with Mangle. Additionally, you ever notice how Mangle is the only animatronic that actually doesn't possess any human-like noises? The core 4 also feature moaning, sighs, or laughs at various points throughout the series. Ballora, Baby, Springtrap, and the Fun Times all talk. Even the Nightmare animatronics breathe, which is a whole nother can of worms I'm not opening up today. Mangle just has garbled radio noises, almost like its cognitive functioning is much less than all the other possessed creatures in the series. So that's Fruity Maze, but then comes the biggie. Perhaps the most vague and bizarre moments from FNAF 6 come from the hidden Easter eggs in the final Lorekeeper minigame, Midnight Motorist. It starts simple enough. A top-down racer game, but glitch through an opening in the bottom of the track and suddenly you're on a rainy drive through a rural tree-filled landscape, visiting a bar named Junior's and eventually making your way to a lonely house hidden deep in the woods. Out pops the driver and he's orange? Thanks, Scott. We finally solved the identity of Purple Guy and you just had to throw in one final monochromatic mystery man. Orange Guy? I like to call him Mustard Man. He charges into the house.
I forget who it is.
The fact that someone, presumably his son, has locked himself in his room. He goes around the back to find a way in, only to discover that the window is broken with a set of footprints and some bear tracks, leading to, quote, that place again. And that's it. The minigame abruptly ends there. No matter how many times you replay this game, it's always the same. It's weird, it's disturbing, and most of all, it's frustrating, since it seems to introduce all new characters in a game that's mostly about bringing every other character's story to a close. But are these truly new faces? No. Look first at the house. A lone house in a clearing surrounded by trees. Believe it or not, but we've actually seen this house before on the title screen to FNAF 4. A lone house in a clearing surrounded by trees. Not only that, but both houses have 2 stories. Even the roofs look roughly the same. But now think back to a quote that I mentioned last episode about how Scott writes these stories. Quote, there have been other times, however, when my original intentions didn't come across clearly. In those instances, I make a point to clarify in the next game. FNAF 6 is all about clarifying, explaining Remnant, explaining the scooper, the puppet, and what's our connective tissue in this minigame? Someone sitting in a living room watching TV. And what did we see at the end of every night of Sister Location? Michael Afton going home after his shift to watch TV. That slouchy figure there may look like a balding grandma, but it's good old Mike Casual Bongos Afton himself binging on his Immortal and the Restless. And I can further prove it via his text. Scott has always roughly adhered to the convention of dialogue colors being important. And this final game is no exception to this rule. Green bouncer dude talks in green, orange guy talks in orange, and Michael Afton on the couch talks in gray. Exactly like he did when he was laughing at his crying brother back in FNAF 4. It's definitely a slightly different shade, but he's also the only one in the entirety of this series to speak in gray lettering. They also both wear gray shirts, only the truly fashionable match their t-shirt to their font color. Couple all of that with him watching TV, the FNAF 4 title screen house, which always has a TV in it, and the character being protective over some him, say a younger brother, and you have yourself the perfect portrait of the Afton family, which would make Orange Guy guy, Purple Guy, otherwise known as William Afton. He's even got his signature purple car, the same one that we saw him use in the FNAF 2 Take Cake minigame before he killed off Henry's daughter. But why? Why would Scott choose to make William Afton some color other than purple for like the first time ever in the final game in the series? The answer is actually kind of mundane, because by this point in the series, there are two different purple guys, William and his son. It would have been confusing from a storytelling standpoint, though I do gotta say, Scott, it's not that much better, since now you're swapping in a whole new color for a character who's been represented by another color the whole time. It's a bit confusing. Anyway, what does all of this mean? Why, out of all things, did Scott choose to show us this random scene? What is he trying to explain about the story through the battle between an orange William Afton and a runaway child? All of that in just a few days. This video is really long already. Plus, in a game that tries to answer everything from the entirety of the series, what was in the FNAF 4 box? Was it truly left forgotten forever? Is Scott waiting to reveal its contents in a future game? Make sure you take a bite out of that subscribe button to find out those final answers, as well as the solution to perhaps the biggest question of them all, the Lore Keeper's final screen. After unlocking all of these glitched minigames, Scott presents us with a series of gravestones filled with names, some familiar and some not so much. So, who are they? What do they reveal about the story? And how can you help me to solve Five Nights' last and most closely guarded secrets? All of that next time. In the meantime, though, remember, Game Theory merch is now available, but hopefully by this point it's selling out faster than a YouTuber.
It is not available.
A message from the Sonic School of Research and Deliciousment.
They say you can't put a price on fun, but they don't know what the heck they're talking about.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory in 2018, a show apparently dedicated entirely to virtual boxes, loot box psychology, loot boxes as gambling, the treatise on the science of fictional cardboard boxes. It's like box episodes are the new FNAF episodes for the channel. Gotta milk 'em dry! Next episode should be on, I don't know, the orange box or something. But in all seriousness, the box tetralogy reaches its dramatic finale today, as I cover what is perhaps the most infamous digital box of the last decade, FNAF 4's Locked Chest. Now, last episode we started to explore the idea that FNAF 6 is all about tying up loose ends. That as the last game in the Purple Guy saga, Scott's goal was to give us the information necessary to close the book on this chapter in Freddy's story. But to me, as someone who has studied these games inside and out, if there was one question that needed to be answered in a final game, it wasn't how Michael Afton was able to become a living purple corpse through Remnant, or how Henry was able to create a device that could somehow simulate child body temperatures. I didn't even care so much about the timeline at this point. No, what I wanted answered was the biggest lingering mystery of FNAF. What was in the box? Rewind back to FNAF 4, the game that utterly wrecked everyone's understanding of this franchise. You beat the game, you get the iconic line of, "I will put you back together," and then boom, a literal mystery box that would make the likes of J.J. Abrams proud, accompanied by the lines, "Perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now." But you know what? I never forgot. The fans never forgot. And I don't think Scott forgot either. So now, 2 years, 3 games, and 4 books later, I think I'm finally ready to break open the locks and reveal what was supposed to be in this thing versus what actually was in the thing. Because I have reason to believe that the contents of the box have changed 3 separate times. And that now, in the wake of FNAF 6, Scott has already shown us what is inside the box. Let me explain. FNAF 4 was released on July 23rd, 2015, and with it, the mysterious box ending. Exactly 1 month later, August 24th, Scott made a post on Steam referencing a Halloween update for the game, an update where he had considered opening the box. Quote, "I wanted to post some information about the upcoming Halloween update. I started off a few months ago with several ideas in mind for what I wanted to release, ranging from DLC to a new game to opening the box, more on that later, but now I've been working steadily and have a pretty clear vision going forward." End quote. So, why wasn't the box included as a part of that update? Well, he explains it later in the post. quote again. Now, I want to talk about what won't be included, the box. You know, when I released the first game over a year ago, I was amazed at how quickly everyone found every bit of lore and story. Then the same happened with Part 2. Then Part 3 came out, and once again the story was uncovered by the community. But then I released Part 4, and somehow no one, not a single person found the pieces. The story remains completely hidden. I guess most people assume that I filled the game with random Easter eggs this time. I didn't. What's in the box? It's the pieces put together. But the bigger question is, would the community accept it that way? The fact that the pieces have remained elusive this time strikes me as incredible and special. A fitting conclusion in some ways, and because of that, I've decided that maybe some things are best left forgotten forever. End quote. So clearly in the month after the release of the game, disappointed that the mysteries were staying hidden, Scott had already changed his mind about what he wanted to do with this box. And I just gotta say, Scott, my man, you didn't even give me a shot at this one. You change your mind about a game's fundamental mystery in a month? I mean, in that amount of time, all I could do was release a rushed out retrofitted prediction theory because I was stuck in con season when the game was released. Give a theorist some slack, man. So that begs the question of what he originally intended to be in the box. My theory, toys, a badge, a hospital wristband, and a picture of what eventually became known as the Afton family. The only time we would ever see them truly happy in this franchise. Remember, FNAF 4 was meant to be the final game in the series, and based on all the clues Scott left prior to the release of Sister Location, he absolutely intended for Freddy's to be a story told in the mind of a child. Maybe not so much in dreams, like Dream Theory would indicate, but perhaps in a coma, or on the kid's deathbed. I mean, sure, let me be clear. Yes, there was absolutely a real-life string of murders informing this kid's visions, as evidenced by the puppet and the murder outside the restaurant. But I mean, look at what he just said in that Steam post. Most people assume that I filled FNAF
That actually kind of scared me. Don't know why, but that actually kind of scared me.
4 with random Easter eggs. I didn't. And now look at everything that lines up in this game. Toys that match the look and behavior of the toy animatronics. People getting shoved into suits by a guy hidden in shadows that would probably look like a murder to a young child. A boy carrying a balloon to inspire Balloon Boy. Bullies who wear masks that perfectly match the nightmares. Shadows that would literally inspire shadow animatronics. A mangled toy. The concept of a plush Bonnie that bites you. A child's phone and a child's fan to simulate the night guard desk. People walking around in animatronic suits like Springtrap, a grandfather clock like you would find in your home going off to signal the end of the night. The list goes on and on and on. And even though he'd moved on with the story, Scott still wanted us to figure it out, which is why on our October 5th, 2015 GT Live, Scott crashed the live stream, giving us explicit clues to figure it out. 4 games, 1 story, why is Toy Chica missing her beak, and what is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. All 3 clues again pointing to the conclusion of some sort of coma theory, with the box containing the items alluding to that story. Toys and plushies to show where all the ideas for the animatronics came from. A badge to show that this kid's father worked at the restaurant as a security guard. A hospital band to make it clear that the child was rushed to the hospital in the aftermath of the Fredbear bite, and a happy family that we see shattered in the aftermath of a stupid prank. This box is locked and hidden away in an attic or a basement when the child dies. The memories it contains are too tough to bear. But the line of, would the community accept it that way, is the key phrase in all of this. Scott...
The line in the middle of the screen is because of chat. I can't get rid of it. I'm sorry, the only way to get rid of it is if I remove chat.
Knew that the story, as he envisioned it, would be controversial for a fan base that was literally
Which I could
comparing
do.
shades of purple across the series. He had a solution to the story that he wanted to tell, but was now trapped by his own success. People were too interested in his mystery box, which is why Sister Location and everything afterward emphasized more real-life events. Scoopers and Remnant and literal purple people walking around outside. But before he got to that point, there was one...
Do you guys like the chat? I can remove it.
The pimply-faced puberty of the franchise. The game that, also like puberty, everyone wants to forget, including Scott himself. And it was here
Man, that was an amazing game.
of the box a second time.
I love that game.
Normally, you would never see any connections to the box. You would just play through this bizarre fever dream of an RPG, and then finally kill Scott Cawthon himself as the final boss of the game. Yeah, in case you skipped over FNAF World, Scott is one of the final bosses and complains about how obnoxious the fans of the series can get. It is strange, it is funny, certainly meta, and most undeniably passive-aggressive. Anyway, if you linger on the opening dialogue between your character and Fredbear, you unlock a hidden quest that lurks beneath the surface of the game that was undoubtedly meant to tie into the mystery of the box. We're told that the quest requires us to, quote, leave breadcrumbs for him to help him find his way. The him we're helping is FNAF 4's bite victim, and we know this from the opening dialogue. Quote, something has gone wrong. That's why I'm here. But I won't let the same happen to you. I will put you back together. Haha, the classic FNAF 4 line. So infuriatingly vague. Anyway, that line confirms that the you being talked about here is the bite victim, that the something has gone wrong is referring to the bite itself, and that the yellow eyes doing the talking, the one who is trapped here, is the puppet. From here, your secret quest is to find a series of clocks and complete mini-games that directly relate to the steps necessary to unlock FNAF 3's Happiest Day ending. You push Balloon Boy into a box, you press 4 arcade buttons, you set up 4 cupcakes, etc., etc. And if you do everything correctly, your secret ending reads as follows. Quote, we're still your friends. Do you believe that? The pieces are in place for you. All you have to do is find them. And we know from FNAF 3 that the pieces are indeed found. On the cutscenes between nights, we find the clues that FNAF World left for us hidden in the hallway, telling us to do things like double-click Balloon Boy and collect the 4 cupcakes, which then enables us to complete the glitched minigames and release the spirits once and for all. But the important line of this FNAF World ending is, the pieces are in place for you. A line that very intentionally mirrors the language Scott used to describe the contents of the box in the first place. What's in the box? It's the pieces put together. And if you think that this is just a linguistic coincidence, it's not. Remember, Scott doesn't do coincidence, because here's the real shocker. While trolling through the game's texture files, Reddit user Poi2010-201, or at least his was the earliest post that I could find discussing this discovery, found that FNAF 4's box was actually hidden in FNAF World's code. But it wasn't just the box, it was a texture of the box, unlocked and opened. So, for a second time, we clearly see that Scott had plans to reveal what was inside his mystery box. Which then begs the question, what was in it this time? And honestly, it's hard to say. As you can probably tell, FNAF World played with the lore of the main series in some very unusual ways. For instance, the clock quest showed that this weird, self-aware video game world was somehow able to influence the events of the real world, leaving breadcrumbs in the real world that you would be able to follow in FNAF 3. But because the game ends with the line, the pieces are in place for you to follow, it implies that the guard we're playing as in FNAF 3, the one who is actually finding these clues, was the bite victim, which then opens up an entirely different can of worms. And if it's all true that the puppet is stuck in this weird nebulous FNAF world, then the world of the game is literally, or symbolically, limbo or death. Anyway, it's very messy. If I were to guess, Scott planned on FNAF World, the game actually being the box. A game that literally contained all the pieces of this franchise put together. Yeah, it's a bit symbolic and half-baked, but you know, so was FNAF World. But it was here that the mystery would change direction yet again. This time, though, it wasn't the community that prompted the change, but rather Scott himself, who made it clear that he was dissatisfied with FNAF World as a rushed and unpolished release. Embarrassed by the game, he quarantined it off to its own little segment of the franchise. And in the process, he retconned its story to focus on the new, more human drama-esque direction that the series would take moving forward. You can see this actually through creative changes like the game's new ending, which revealed Henry and Baby for the very first time, as well as some lines that got added between updates, with glitched Fredbear foreshadowing something terrible coming, aka Baby. Instead of being focused backwards on details from previous games like the bite victim and the FNAF 3 minigames, the game was now looking forward to a game that had yet to be released, which left the box and the resolution it promised for the entirety of the Freddy story once again abandoned. And when both Sister Location and FNAF 6 rolled credits with no mention of boxes, that's exactly where it seemed like it would stay, forgotten forever. But I wasn't convinced. For as convoluted as this story often is, Scott cares too much about it, and cares too much about this community to leave a mystery this big unanswered. My first thought about connecting the box to the new game was Candy Cadet, the best character to ever come out of this franchise.
Candy candy.
If you visit Candy Cadet enough times and give him enough tokens, he'll tell you one of 3 separate stories, all sharing the same general theme of 5 objects merging into one object and then being put into a box. In the first, 5 keys are melted together into one key by a mother trying to save imprisoned kids, with everyone dying trapped in their own room. The second has 5 kittens in danger of being eaten alive by a snake, the remains of which get sewn together and stored in a shoebox. And the third, well, the third is the most uplifting story, as 5 orphans get adopted by a man who wants to protect them from a burglar, and it doesn't go so well.
He left one day to buy food, his heart being filled with gladness, but returned to find that the burglar had chosen his home, and killed all 5 of the children. The man could only afford one coffin, so he stitched the 5 bodies together to make one, and buried the child. That night, there was a knock at the door.
So clearly, the Candy Cadet stories were making some connection to boxes. But what did all these stories mean? Characters getting stitched together immediately made me think of Ennard, but even at Ennard's peak, he only had 4 characters inside of him: Freddy, Foxy, Ballora, and Baby. So that one didn't quite work out. Famously, there were 5 children killed as a part of the missing children's incident, but their souls individually ended up in animatronics rather than being put together and crammed into the same box. There are 5 other games in the series, so maybe this is all a meta commentary about the franchise itself, but then what would it mean to stitch them together? Just solve the story? Were the stories fixating on different moments of the Freddy timeline? Suffice it to say, Candy Cadet led me straight to a dead end. A dead and stitched together end, that is. I gotta say, I scoured the game. I knew the box was hidden here somewhere, and I suspected that Candy Cadet was involved in some way, but I was so overwhelmed with information at this point. Clues whirling past me, vague minigames and stories that had no concrete answers, details of games upon games, but unused content. The box needed to be some solution that brought together all of these separate pieces. And then finally, the storm cleared and it all clicked. The final image of the game. During the true ending, Henry calls in to unveil his trap.
You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize.
We then see the schematics of the ventilation system we've been working with throughout the entire game. We see it for a long time as the center square, the actual pizzeria filled with kids, fades away. And what we're left with is a familiar shape, a box, a rectangular box, a locked box, a box with no exit, a box where, according to our responsibilities in paragraph 4, we put all the pieces together by salvaging the remaining animatronics, playtesting the minigames for all of the hidden lore, and finally bring the FNAF storyline to its end once and for all. As we bring this story to a close, what did Scott finally decide to do with the box? He made it Henry's trap in FNAF 6 to
Psychic
put
friend
the final
Fredbear.
pieces together and finish him off once and for all.
I did not know what some people watch this whole thing.
It's 3 stories. The box is filled with 5 dead
Welcome to the
things
stream,
becoming
everyone.
one. 5 children killed, sewn together, and buried in one coffin. 5 dead kittens, sewn together and kept in one shoebox. 5 keys melted together and torched in one room. And in our case in FNAF 6, 5 animatronics trapped in one pizzeria simulator and burned. And this works any way that you count it. Baby, Springtrap, and Molten Freddy, who we know according to his blueprint has 3 animatronics in him, thus making 5. Or you can count it Baby, Springtrap, Molten Freddy, Puppet, and our character who we play as Michael. 5 characters, all essential to the FNAF story brought into one box to die. Even Henry himself has a role here in the Candy Cadet stories. He's the innocent of those stories, the one who started with good intentions who ultimately fails to protect those under his care. He's the mom who lets the kids burn. He's the kid who leaves the snake's cage open. It's Henry's negligence that allows the snake, the burglar William Afton, to claim so many lives. We hear him lament this in the insanity ending.
It's only now that I understand the depth of the depravity of this creature, this monster that I unwillingly helped to create.
This was Scott's subtle nod to the box in FNAF's final game. The way to work it in after all the twists and turns his story had to take over the years. Was it what he originally intended for it? Absolutely not. Is it the most obvious explanation? Not by a long shot. But when you consider that this animatronic empire started as one big unexpected twist in Scott's life and was then fueled by a story full of not so obvious narrative moments, having the box end up being a symbol for the franchise's final climactic moment, it Feels right. If I can borrow from Scott's original description, it feels special. A fitting conclusion. And with that, there's only one theory left to go. The analysis I promised for Midnight Motorist and the mystery of the Lorekeeper Graves. Two questions that close out these games for what feels like the final time, but begin to point towards what the future might hold for the Freddy's series. More on that soon. Not next episode, since if I do more than 2 of these things in a row, people get really mad at me, but definitely soon, since I want to put this thing to rest as much as you guys. I could use, at the very least, a complete refresh on this whole thing and start from scratch again. So ring the bell to ensure that we all close out the Freddy saga together. And in the meantime, remember, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
I'm gonna make sure I didn't miss anything.
Switch to Chrome to securely store your passwords, so you can sign in with just a click.
That's it. I give up. Scott, you beat me. I can't solve FNAF. I can't. But I'm close. So darn close. And this time, I need you guys to come in.
What is with this new intro? Hello, Foxy Lord.
Theory, where the fourth closet is a recording closet. Now, most of you are probably confused about that.
I was supposed to do it the Ultimate Custom Night.
You haven't implanted Scott Coffin with an RFID tracker that follows his every movement. Fortunately, I have. Which means that I can tell you 2 things. 1, Scott spends a lot of time on the toilet. Gotta stop maxing out the spicy salsa at Chipotle, Scotty C. Us old people gotta watch our digestive biomes. And 2, the FNAF series may have quote-unquote ended with FNAF 6, but our time with the 13 variations of the same darn animatronic bear are far from over, because Scott has been quietly working away on his pièce de résistance, Ultimate Custom Night. All your favorite characters from all the games attacking you all at the same time. 51 characters, all able to be cranked up to level 20. I gotta be real, Markiplier, might be time to be giving up your FNAF crown. That means there can only be one. Doko, save us. You're our only hope. Anyway, if you're wondering why this episode took so long to come out, that's one of the big reasons why. I was afraid that, like the last custom night, I'd be working on the theory and the DLC would come out with hidden scenes explaining the lore, and then suddenly I'd have to contend with even more purple people puking up robotic spaghetti in the middle of the streets. But based on Scott's playtesting, where right now he's averaging a survival time of 15 seconds, it looks like I may have an opening here. It's been a while, let me remind you that we've already covered a lot of ground here in videos 1 and 2 of the series. Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, otherwise known as FNAF 6, was created with the intention to tie up a lot of loose ends, both for Scott and for the game franchise. We learned that William's business partner Henry, who we were first introduced to back in FNAF World and later in the novel, does in fact play a role in the mainline series of the games. Henry is canon. In FNAF 6, he creates a simulated pizzeria to serve as a trap, luring in all the remaining animatronics. One could say it was a locked box to put all the pieces together. Henry then pulls a Thanos and turns everyone into an ashy pile.
I'm not feeling too good, Fox.
Henry's hit list included Springtrap, aka William Afton, aka the metaphorical purple guy, Baby, aka William's daughter Elizabeth, Ennard, aka the combination of Molten Freddy / Ballora / Funtime Foxy, your player character Michael Afton, aka the literal purple guy who puked up robot spaghetti, and the newcomer Lefty, like Wally but with less robot lovey-dovey and more robot stabby-stabby. We learned through the hidden insanity ending and other in-game clues that Lefty is a containment suit, built specifically by Henry to lure and trap the puppet, which is possessed by the spirit of his deceased daughter who remains nameless. The insanity ending also gave us clues as to how the Funtime animatronics function. Unlike the OGs, the Funtimes are heated up and infused with remnant. It's basically soul juice that's extracted from kidnapped children. But that was all just surface stuff. Through our analysis of the Fruity Maze minigame and clues from FNAF 2, we were able able to piece together that this dead dog is probably Mangle, and that this girl becomes one of Afton's early victims. It's clearly not his daughter, notice the eye color, and it's not Henry's daughter, notice the hair color, so it must be one of William Afton's victims. And that's pretty much everything we covered in my last 2 videos. But now it's time to get to the new stuff, starting with this girl. Not only do we know that this is one of William Afton's earliest victims, we also know that her name is Susie and that she goes on to possess Chica. That's right, we can identify her based on this image. If you manage to find all the game's Easter eggs, you unlock the Lore Keeper certificate and a final screen at the end of the game, a hillside filled with gravestones. Graves with a very diverse set of names, 5 in the foreground with 1 name obscured and 1 in the back with, again, the name hidden from view. Trust me, I tried my best to pull a CSI on that one. Enhance. Enhance again. Enhance a 3rd time. Damn it, Scott! Anyway, this imagery should seem pretty familiar, right? 4 graves with 4 names, 3 boys and a girl, which perfectly matches up to our core 4 animatronics, 3 boy robots and a girl robot. To further solidify the point, look at how the graves are arranged. It's a pattern that's identical to the arrangement of the masks in the good ending of FNAF 3, even down to the girl character being 3rd in line and slightly behind the other 2. Coincidence? I think you know the answer to that by now. Then you have this mysterious 5th grave hidden off to the side. That one definitely contains the soul of whoever winds up possessing Golden Freddy, but more on that one later. And lastly, there's this one overlooking them all. Up on the top of the hill, that's the puppet. Henry's daughter, the one who watches over the rest. 6 main characters, 6 graves, and the same 6 characters that we see fade away during the Happiest Day minigame at the end of FNAF 3's good ending. In short, what the gravestone scene is revealing to us is who these victims are, with Susie as Chica. That also means Freddy is really named Gabriel, Foxy is Fritz, and Bonnie is Jeremy. It's also relatively easy to figure out the name on the puppet's grave, Charlie, or Charlotte, one of the 2. We know this not through the games, but rather through the books. But the books aren't canon, I hear you saying, and you're absolutely right, they're not. But they're starting to cross over very heavily. For instance, the entire reveal of William Afton having a business partner named Henry, he was first introduced in the Silver Eyes long before Sister Location ever came out. You ever wonder about this weird wolf poster hanging in the alley of FNAF 6? It's actually one of the Twisted animatronics from the 2nd novel, The Twisted Ones, who are programmed to hide during the day by burying themselves in shallow graves, then dig themselves up at night to roam the countryside looking for innocent victims to vor. And wouldn't you know it, but that's exactly what we see hinted at in the FNAF 6 minigame Midnight Motorist. By going through the game's secret exit and then plowing your car into this random area between the trees, you're able to get out in a clearing in the middle of a forest, and in the upper left corner of the screen is a pile of unmarked dirt. You can't interact with it, the game doesn't acknowledge it at all, but very clearly it is intentionally there. It's super random, right? It is, until you read The Twisted Ones. Or have me read it for you, because seriously, that's why I'm here. Page 74, quote, "When Charlie reached the backyard, she stopped dead. Before her were 3 huge holes in the ground. They looked like graves. Something climbed out of these," end quote. So clearly, even though the books aren't canon, there is significant crossover with the characters and events from the series. In the books, Henry had a daughter named Charlotte. In the games, Henry has a daughter who goes on to become the puppet. It only makes sense for them to share the name, hence gravestone number 5. But it's gravestone number 6 where, I gotta be honest, after months of brainstorming, working and reworking sequences of events and analyzing imagery, I have to regrettably admit defeat. You heard that right. For the first time ever on the show, I have to throw in the towel. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of leads here. Loose threads that I know go somewhere, and I feel like I'm just a step or 2 away from putting it all together, but I just can't quite do it, and I hate to admit it, and honestly, that is the other reason why this video has taken so long for me to write and put together. I didn't want to admit defeat. I didn't want to come to you without a complete idea of what was going on, but honestly, at this point, I'm almost out of ideas, and I need your help, or maybe even a little helpful nudge from Scott Cawthon in the comments to help put it all together, which honestly could be a very cool group project for all of us to work on together. Anyway, let me explain. Grave 6 obviously belongs to Golden Freddy, and once we know that name, we'll finally be able to uncover the source behind the mysterious repeated messages of "it's me" that have been popping up since FNAF 1. It is a huge deal. And here's the biggest twist of them all. We're not shooting in the dark here. Scott has already given us all the information that we need to solve what the name actually is. You see, the trio of novels isn't the only book that Scott Cawthon's released. Late last year, Scott released the Five Nights at Freddy's Survival Logbook, an activity workbook for kids filled with things like simple quizzes about the games, drawing projects, and writing prompts. The theme is that you're a new night guard at the Freddy's restaurant. It's adorable! Until you realize it's a book asking kids who their stuff would go to when they die a gruesome, horrific death trapped inside a furry suit. It's some dark, dark stuff. But perhaps the darkest part of the book is the dabbing chica. Anyway, things start to feel more than they seem from page 1, when it's revealed that this book once belonged to a guy named Mike. And one look at the book's word search immediately clues you in that there's way more here than meets the eye, putting the likes of Gravity Falls Journal number 3 on blast. Basically, the Five Nights at Freddy's Survival Logbook is a book-length metagame dedicated to revealing Golden Freddy's real name, all disguised as a children's activity workbook. It is unquestionably my favorite thing that this franchise has yet produced. That is no exaggeration. This thing is so cool, but the problem is, I can't solve it. Here's how it all breaks down. Several pages throughout the book contain faded text that says, my name. Each of those pages with that text also has a numeric clue hidden on it. Sometimes it's written in plain sight, sometimes with numbers out of place, sometimes the page number itself is wrong. Page 29 is numbered 52. Page 32 is numbered 39. Page 43 is numbered 15. On page 47, the numbers 7 and 2 appear out of order in this survey question. On page 85, we're presented with a list and numbers 10 and 11 appear in red. On page 108, the time 8:11 appears on an incident report that Mike was supposed to log in. So putting all those numeric clues in order, we get 52, 39, 15, 7, 2, 10, 11, 8, 11. But that's just the beginning. Throughout the book, there are some coupons for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. On one of those coupons, we see that Mike wrote himself the message, for real value, see page 61. You flip over to page 61 and suddenly you see a finish the comic strip exercise, where in one of the panels, Foxy and Freddy stand in front of a chalkboard with 5 plus 4 written in one part and a 3 written in the bottom right corner. To me, this very clearly tells us that we need to add the two numbers together on each of those 6 pages from earlier to get the real value for that page. 5 plus 2 is 7, 3 plus 9 is 12, 1 plus 5 is 6, 7 plus 2 is 9, 10 plus 11 is 21, and 8 plus 11 is 19. 7, 12, 6, 9, 21, 19, which seems like it's giving us a code to a 6-letter name. But now, what do you do with those numbers? Well, one page in the book contains a giant grid that encourages readers to draw in 8 bits. But if you look closely at the grid's axes are actually numbered, and there are tiny letters in the grid's first few boxes. It seemed to me like this grid was setting up an alphanumeric code where the numbers each get represented by a different letter. Putting 7, 12, 6, 9, 21, and 19 into that, you get Gilpheus. It's clearly not Golden Freddy's real name. But then what about that 3 that's in the bottom right corner of the chalkboard? I tried shifting all the letters and numbers 3 up and 3 down, decoding, recoding, still nothing that would make any sort of sense. But I wasn't admitting defeat yet. The fact that all this is happening on a grid seemed to point to the numbers being decoded using a Visionaire cipher. If you've never encountered these before, well, welcome to the exciting world of cryptography, the art of solving codes. Visionaire ciphers are one of the most famous codes out there. Basically, you need a giant alphabet grid and a keyword. So, say I want to encode the word crying child, that's called my plain text, and I want my keyword to be Mike. What I would do is, in my alphabet grid, go over to my first letter, the C in crying, and then go down to the row M, the first letter in my keyword Mike. That gives me the letter O. Then I would find where column R for the R in crying intersects with row I for the second letter in Mike to get a Z. That's my second encoded letter. And then keep going with column Y crossing with row K, and on, repeating the keyword over and over until I'm at the end of the phrase. If you've done it correctly, you get the ciphertext or encoded word Ozim Zamlun Luton. Ozim Zamluton. Ozim Zamluton. Then to decode, you just reverse the process. And that's what I tried, over and over again, on and off again for months, and still nothing. Using those real values of 7, 12, 6, 9, 21, and 19, I tried everything. Different keywords like Mike, Chica, Friday, since it's on the magazine that Foxy's reading, Bonnie, Foxy. Doing the process forwards and backwards, trying to shift everything by 3, both before and after the encoding and decoding process, since that's the random number on the the chalkboard that has no explanation. I even started reversing the codes I was working with, since the number 3 on the chalkboard could potentially relate to page 3 of the survival guide, which specifically says take a moment for self-reflection. So that's what I did. I reflected the numbers before coding, after coding, reversing the alphabet. Still nothing. If you think that's a lot, I still wasn't done, because there are other oddities in this book. For unknown reasons, Mike has made red ink tally marks throughout it. On page 9, there are 5. On page 19, there are 10. On page 31, there are 14, but they're in 2 groups, a 5 and a 9. On page 36, there are 5. On page 100, there are again 5. No explanation, no nothing. But they can't just be random tally marks, right? They seem important, and they seem especially important because there are 6 tally hints, just like the 6 real values that we found hidden throughout the book earlier. So I've tried shifting the individual letters off of those tally marks. Nothing. Tried shifting the letters off the tallies, then shifting the results by that 3 that's on that chalkboard. Nothing. Added the tallies, then reversed. Nothing. And on and on and on. Hopefully this all gives you an idea of what I do for some of these theories, taking weeks just to brainstorm new ways to attack the problem, but this time I'm coming up empty-handed. I still have nothing. None of my attempts have yielded anything like a real word or a name. It feels like I'm right there, like the solution is right in front of me, but I just can't quite grasp it. And this is where I have to raise the white flag. I don't know what to do. I need your help, or else I need Scott to give us some clues or something, because I am stumped. I feel like I've tried everything, and very clearly this is the way that Scott intends to reveal Golden Freddy's name. But without all of us working to solve it, that name will forever remain in mystery. And this is only the beginning. The survival guide is simultaneously the most important, most revealing, and most frustrating piece of evidence to be thrown into this franchise. Yes, the Golden Freddy puzzle is a huge part of that, but there's more. So much more. This book confirms so many assumptions about this series and unveils so many more mysteries than we ever thought possible. And the Golden Freddy mystery is just a small piece of that. The rest all relate to Michael Afton. But all of that will have to be in just a few days. Don't worry, I'm not gonna make you wait months. So make sure you jump scare that subscribe button to ensure that you're here next week for what I
Didn't he say that Golden Freddy was Mike?
shattering FNAF game theory since I don't even know. FNAF 2? The things that we're covering next time completely upend a lot of what we thought we knew about this franchise, so get ready for a long one. And in the meantime...
Jeez. Well, almost a quarter of the way there. Got Gmod Freddy doing Gmod dance.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to... Screw it, you know by now. If I seem a bit off my game today, forgive me. You'll soon learn why. Pull up a chair, let's talk. Last episode caught you up on everything, and I do mean everything. All my past theories on FNAF 6, the gravestones, the masks, the names of the children inside the animatronics, the connections to the novels, and the identity of the puppet. But then I showed you this. The FNAF Survival Logbook. The book that, in 7 years of doing this, finally broke me. A book that contains within its pages an elaborate series of codes that serve as the key to unlocking the identity of Golden Freddy. A freaking children's activity workbook with a dabbing chica in it is the thing to defeat me. Ugh. That dabbing chica taunts me in my nightmares. But Golden Freddy's Unbreakable Code is only the tip of the iceberg. This book is like a repeated kick in the balls, as everything I thought I knew about FNAF has crumbled in front of my eyes. It's like Freddy Fazbear got a hold of the Infinity Gauntlet and snapped his fingers, and then all of my theories suddenly turned to dust. Because unlike the novels, which have questionable canonicity, the Survival Logbook outright answers a lot of our questions about these games. But the answers that it provides just lead to more questions. And not stupid small questions either, like what's Mangle's gender? No, it upends huge parts of the story. The logbook is simultaneously the most important, most revealing, and most frustrating piece of evidence to ever be thrown into this franchise. You see,
Real quick, I'm gonna be right back. Well, I'm gonna bring my phone with me, so I'm gonna keep playing the video, but I'm just not gonna be here. I'm still gonna watch it from my phone. I'm gonna bring with me, but yeah, be right back.
as I mentioned last time, this workbook once belonged to Mike, aka Michael Afton. The book establishes that Mike writes his answers in red pen. It also establishes that there's a spirit possessing the book who speaks to Mike via lightly faded.
If I had known that you guys couldn't hear it, you know. How does this sound?
Text. From what I can gather, it appears to be the spirit of Golden Freddy. And starting with that information, the logbook then proceeds to...
Stop. Sorry about that. I thought you guys could hear it better. Let me...
drop bombshell after bombshell as far as lore reveals go. First, the book outright confirms what we've known for a while now, that Mike is the same Mike who works as the night guard during Sister Location. When asked what he would like for his 1 week bonus, we see him.
I didn't know you guys could hear it, and y'all didn't say nothing. Should have said something. Doggo, how is this?
Him doodling in the corners of the page baskets of money and baskets of exotic butters. On another page, he's drawing a smooth set of casual bongos. Sure, it's nothing.
Is that good? Is that loud? Too quiet? Wow. How was it before? How was it? How I had it before? Was that good? Right here, just put it back normal. This is still
earth-shattering, but when it comes to this franchise, getting any.
I guess it is a little loud. But lower it a little bit.
Portion of any theory
Yeah,
confirmed is a big win. And while that reveal might not be all that earth-shattering, you know what is? The book reveals that Michael Afton is who we play as in FNAF 4. On page 40, the workbook starts asking about dreams, and via his doodles, we see that Mike somehow knows the appearance of Nightmare Fredbear, something only the protagonist of FNAF 4 should be aware of. To further confirm this, on page 23 of the book, the spirit who uses the book to talk to Mike outright asks, was your favorite childhood toy a plastic purple telephone? Which, as you may remember, is a direct reference to the purple telephone on the ground in the FNAF 4 bedroom. And if you still think it's a coincidence, it's not. 20 pages later, the spirit starts talking about whether any of the toys on the page look familiar. Most don't, except for one. The phone. Now, for the 8 of you who still remember how this whole freaking story fits together, you might be asking me, but we all thought the protagonist of FNAF 4 was the crying child, the one who gets himself bitten during the birthday party because you have flashes of a hospital bed and hear a flatline at the end of the game. We also assumed that the animatronic nightmare was representative of death. And you know what? You're absolutely right. That is exactly what we've been thinking. And here's the thing. We weren't wrong. We've apparently been right about all of that, except there was one teeny tiny itsy bitsy little wrinkle that we didn't expect. Michael Afton was the bite victim. Michael Afton was the crying child.
Humdrum mint. Fancy shape.
I know! I couldn't believe it either, but the proof here is unquestionable. On page 75, a page asking about imaginary friends and featuring the psychic friend Fredbear plush, the spirit outright asks, does he still talk to you? And perhaps the most damning piece of evidence of all, on page 103, the huge reveal, quote, the party was for you. Mike Afton is confirmed to be the crying child. He's the bite victim. He's the one who, at the end of the game, apparently needed to be put back together. It seems undeniable at this point. But then that leads to the obvious next question. How could he have been bitten and died there, but then also be in sister location as an adult, gotten himself scooped, blah, 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 until FNAF 6 when he finally burns with the rest of his family? I have been smacking my head against a wall trying to make sense of it all, and I have some theories. Big surprise there. It's interesting. When I did my final FNAF theory, not that one, my final FNAF theory. No, not that one either. Those are technically FNAF 6 theories. God, jeez, this one. When I did this theory, I concluded that the story of FNAF was, at its core, a story about a family, the Afton family. But now it's becoming increasingly clear to me that it's really the story of Michael Afton specifically. 4 games, 1 story, like Scott said back during the FNAF 4 days so long ago. It's the story of the crying child growing up, discovering the atrocities of his father, and then trying to make amends for those. We know for a fact that Michael Afton is the main character of FNAF 1 from the endgame paycheck, sister location from the name tag and custom night.
I found it. It was right where you said it would be.
FNAF 6 from Henry's closing monologue, and now FNAF 4 from the survival logbook. And we're still not done. The survival logbook also connects Mike to FNAF 2. On page 56, the spirit asks, was your favorite ride the carousel? A question that only makes sense if Mike had been to the FNAF 2 location, because it's the only one with a carousel. That means that the only game without a solid connection to Mike is FNAF 3, but then there's the whole
Father, it's me, Michael.
Complete with a burned down Fazbear fright in the background, which seems to be hinting at him being the person who burned the place down, trying to put an end to his father's reign of terror. Michael Afton even shares a connection with the dead children whose names appear on the gravestones, going back to the survival logbook. See, I told you guys this thing was important. When the book asks about missing people on account of them being stuffed into animatronic suits, the spirit asks, do you miss them? It clearly connects Michael Afton to the other missing kids who go on to possess the animatronic suits. This means that Michael is connected to every game and every major character in the story. So let's update it to 6 games, 1 story, Michael's story. Which is all very beautiful to say, but seriously, what is that story? If you've been paying attention, we still have a pretty big elephant in the room, i.e. a dead kid who somehow grows up to become an immortal purple skin suit for robot spaghetti. Oh, and if the game wasn't complicated enough, Michael might not even be his real name. The spirit in the logbook repeatedly asks him, what do you remember? And even more importantly, do you remember your name? It's even hidden in the freaking word search. And I haven't even mentioned the other elephants in the room, like how very clearly the gravestones relate to the kids in the animatronic suits, and yet 2 of those names directly tie back to the security guards from FNAF 2. And if you want to go really, really deep, like you know I love to do, you see Susie's font on her gravestone? Did you know it's the same font that's used to introduce each night of FNAF 4? That's something that no one else online has noticed, and if fonts are important, which remember, they probably are, Scott doesn't do coincidences, so 4 gravestones with completely different fonts is probably important in some way. Notice how 2 of the gravestones share the same font, but it's not Jeremy and Fritz, which you would probably expect since they're the 2 who are mentioned in FNAF 2. There are so many freaking elephants in this room. It is a very crowded room. Remember what I said earlier about repeated kicks to the crotch? This is what I'm talking about. That said, after months of thinking about this and more kicks to the crotch than I care to mention, I think I do have an idea of what might be going on here. And it all begins in probably the most confusing place of all. Midnight Motorist from FNAF 6. When I first spoke about this minigame, I said that the mustard man here was William Afton. But I could tell that a lot of you weren't too convinced in my conclusion. And I'll be honest, I wasn't 100% sure of it either, but it was the best I could do at the time. But now, I am 100% confident that that is who we're seeing here. You see, FNAF 6 is simultaneously the end of the story as well as the beginning. It's the end because, well, everyone burns to death. And it's the beginning because it's the origin story of the puppet. And as we know, everything begins with the puppet. She's the one that allows all the other animatronics to become possessed, as we see in FNAF 2, which makes the security puppet minigame pretty much the earliest event we ever see in any of these games. And we also know that it's William who killed Charlotte in that back alley. This is the origin story of the purple guy, complete with his purple car that we saw in FNAF 2 after all. But here's the detail I was missing before. If you brighten up the final screen of the security puppet minigame, you'll see tire tracks left by the purple car driving away from his crime. This leads directly to the events of Midnight Motorist, which happens immediately after his murder. Here's how we know this for sure. Not only are you driving a purple car, and not only is it raining in both of the minigames, so they're connected on both those fronts, but get this. Reddit user GB Aura found that this section of the game in the source files is titled Later That Night, giving us the time connection we needed to know 100% that Orange Guy is William Afton. He kills Charlotte in the rain outside of Fredbear's, drives away, and winds up back home later that night. Boom! Proven, locked and loaded. And looking at this minigame, knowing what we know now about Michael being the crying child, we know that the couch potato here is his older brother. Mr. Foxy Mask, let me shove my brother into an animatronic mouth and get him killed, speaking in his signature gray text, who apparently no longer has a name, which leaves Michael as the one who escaped to that place again. That is who William is mad at, with that place being obviously none other than Freddy's. And from there, a lot of pieces start to fit together. William's frustration with Michael escaping explains why we see him have surveillance cameras all over his house and sister location. It's not an experiment or anything. He is literally keeping tabs on the boy who keeps running away. It also explains why we see Michael, the crying child, locked in his room throughout FNAF 4. William himself says at the end of Midnight Motorist that Michael will be sorry when he gets back. And he is, as William constantly locks him in his room, making him unable to escape anymore. All of this might even explain the rationale for the Nightmare animatronics. William built them, or else used his mind-altering sound disc that first appeared in the book and that we talked about in a previous theory to scare Michael so that he would stop wanting to go to the restaurant in the first place. That's why he's so scared of the place when we see him in FNAF 4. I'm literally in the recording closet right now recording this, and suddenly things started to fit together in a weird way. I'm just gonna throw this in here right as it happened in my mind. I'll need to look into this later, probably a future theory, but let's just bring it up now. Orange Guy is William, right? But he's turned away at the front door of Junior's, which is completely random, and everyone's like, why is this in the minigame? Well, could it be because of the investigation into the missing children's incident? Remember what Phone Guy said from FNAF 2?
From what I understand, the building is on lockdown, and no one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous employees.
Afton is rejected at the front door of the building because of the lockdown, and because he's a previous employee. It makes the timeline a bit messy, and I'll have to go back and rework it, but something about this feels right. William Afton was fired from his job, goes back to Junior's, but the building is under investigation because of the missing children's incident. William, being a former employee, is turned away at the door. He's not allowed in. It's not a bar, it's nothing like that. It's Freddy Fazbear's Jr. or something, the second location, the FNAF 2 location. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there because it just occurred to me as I was writing this thing. I haven't had time to fully flesh it out or work it into the script, but I thought it was important enough to include, break the flow of things. Regardless, it gives us something else to chew on. Now back to the actual episode as I wrote it. Okay, I continue to avoid the obvious question here. Michael's death and apparent rebirth. If I'm being honest, it's because I don't really have a fully fleshed out explanation for it. It's less of a theory and more of a hypothesis, really. So would you be so kind as to Freddy Fazbear with me as I go through what I think might be happening here. We know that Michael Afton is special, right? I mean, we see him get scooped, become a pile of rotten flesh, and yet he is still able to survive. In short, when we see him in Sister Location, he's not altogether human. Now, hold on to that idea for a second for me. While we're on the topic of Sister Location, let's look at The Immortal and the Restless, the super random soap opera from the game with a name that, now that I say it aloud in context, actually starts to make a little bit more sense. It stars Vlad, an immortal vampire who's dressed in purple, who starts every episode saying,
Clara, I tell you, the baby isn't mine.
And in FNAF, we have William Afton, a man who's apparently immortal enough to survive a spring lock failure, who, like a vampire, sucks the remnant out of children and who knows, maybe survives on it, and is represented by the color purple. It's actually a lot of similarities. So could the repeat repeated lines of
"Not my baby. The baby isn't mine. The baby isn't mine."
actually relate to William's relationship with Michael. What if Michael isn't actually William's son? It seems like it would be a logical leap, but we know for a fact that Michael's real name isn't Michael. Remember what the logbook said. Do you remember your name? Well, of course he does, logbook. He wrote it on the front cover, Mike, unless of course that's not his real name. So you got all those details? Good, because here's where all this random observation comes together. In the novels, one of the big overarching storylines is that the main character, Charlotte, had a twin who was kidnapped by Springtrap when she was younger. At the end of the second book, it's revealed that the twin wasn't actually kidnapped, it was her, which seems to imply that Charlotte and her twin were one and the same, or were somehow interchangeable. Then, in the final pages, Charlotte dies from a springlock failure, only to miraculously come back to life unscathed in the next few days as if nothing had ever happened. There are also a lot of clues sprinkled throughout the book that William Afton has the ability to create hyper-realistic humanoid robots. I even mentioned that briefly during a past FNAF theory. I haven't even gotten to how I think the main character of the book series is probably a robot, but again, those are all theories for other days. Long story short, everything seems to point to Charlotte in the books being an AI. Maybe at one point she was a person, but she died or was kidnapped at an early age, and ever since, her personality has been programmed into a computer where she's now able to be replicated over and over again into a super advanced robot that's somehow now able to grow and develop. I didn't write the books, okay? Now, obviously, the two are vastly different canons, but the games and books do relate in a lot of ways, and we know in the games from William's daughter Elizabeth that full-on personalities of individuals can get programmed into AI. Elizabeth goes on to possess the spirit of baby. So what if Michael is just one of those? Sure, he was killed in the bite of 83, but when William promised to put him back together, it meant literally put him back together. Find a way to piece him back together using some combination of robotics expertise and miracle soul juice remnant. That's how Michael dies in FNAF 4, but somehow comes back to life in later games. It's how he's able to get scooped, get a bunch of robot spaghetti shoved into him, and then still survive when the robot spaghetti gets puked out of him. It's why he would no longer be able to remember his original name. And after he realizes the truth about what he actually is, that he's no longer human, he decides to end it all in the inferno of FNAF 6, after having done his best to set the souls of his former friends free. Whew boy, that is a lot. And between all these reveals and last week's code, there is a ton for us theorists to start chewing on. But now you get an idea of why I've been beating myself up for months trying to put this whole thing together. It upends mostly everything that we thought we knew about the franchise. Sure, it answers some of our questions like Midnight Motorist and a bit more about FNAF 4, but it opens the door to a lot of new avenues to explore. Anyway, the final book in the FNAF trilogy, The Fourth Closet, is coming out soon. I know a bunch of it leaked online already, but I'm trying to stay blind to it so as not to spoil anything in my theories. And even more exciting, Scott is releasing Ultimate Custom Night soon, so between those two, I am certain that there'll be more clues on the way helping us to come to a final conclusion to all of this.
We put you back together, then take you apart all over again.
So until then, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. With some game hypothesis thrown in there for good measure. Thanks for watching. By the way, if you like the FNAF theories and you haven't checked out our theories on Petscop,
no. You're tired.
Dear Diary,
What
yesterday
is
was
this map
so
pack?
amazing. I met such a wonderful guy, and I know
taking
just
that
how to
better.
get him. He'll be mine by the end of the day. I just know it. I'll tell him that I've solved the lore of his games and constructed a timeline. And once he's there, I'll have him. And once I have him, he'll be mine forever. There's only one thing that could possibly go wrong.
He makes another game? Or dies?
How can Mangle be walking around in FNAF 2 before all the animatronics are possessed? How can Springtrap be experimenting with Remnant when he's sealed in a wall? Answer me! I don't know. That's exactly what I worried might go wrong. No! No! Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, getting burned by hippos since 2018.
Not every story has to have significance, you know? Sometimes a story is just a story. You try to read into every little thing and find meaning in everything anyone says, you'll just drive yourself crazy.
Kinda harsh there, Scott. Speaking of stories, last FNAF Theory, I was at the lowest of lows. The survival logbook threw a lot of weird curveballs into the lore that I don't think anyone was really expecting. Reveals like Michael Afton being the bite victim were interesting, but also really difficult to explain away. And that's where things sat until now. With both the release of the final FNAF book, The Fourth Closet, and what seems to be the final FNAF game, Super FNAF Brothers Ultimate. They're all here. And now with both these releases, we're finally in a position to see all the puzzle pieces we're working with, which means one last examination of the franchise from top to bottom, starting with Custom Night this week, and then next week stepping back and looking across the entire timeline to see if we can wrap things up in a neat blood-soaked bow now that we can see all the events and key players. So step through the curtain, Funtime Foxy, because the show's about to start. It's time for me to pull a can.
We haven't heard anything about Lolbit yet.
Cadet and tell you a story. A story of anger that never dies. A story of never-ending suffering. And I'm not just talking about me trying to write these theories. Today, I tell you the story of how Ultimate Custom Night ends the FNAF franchise in the same place where it all began. As soon as you start playing Custom Night, you can tell that Scott's up to his usual tricks. Yeah, that. But beyond being gaming's biggest troll, I mean, Scott has clearly taken a game that most of us assumed was just a fun little add-on to capstone the series and has used it to deliver a full-on 100% canon addition to the franchise, complete with huge lore reveals mostly hidden in character dialogue once you die, which is pretty nice considering you die a lot in this game. A lot. Oh, yeah, I totally let Night Marion kill me at 3 a.m. on purpose. I just really wanted to see what she would say in this case. What, you guys don't believe me? Seriously, I'm good at this game! I did it for the lore! I did it for the lore! Through these death lines, we can immediately start piecing together what exactly is going on here. The first set of lines reveals that we're powerless to escape.
You and I will be making music together for a long, long time. This is a nightmare that you won't wake from.
Seeing you powerless is like music to me.
More voice lines indicate that not only are we trapped here for all eternity, we also can't die. Or maybe more accurately, we can die just over and over and over again.
What a gift to relish, a victim that can't perish. Let's taste death again and again and again.
You won't get tired of dying, will you?
By the way, for those of you who don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of every element of this franchise, that Toy Chica line is actually a fun little callback to one of my favorite moments in the franchise. Foxy Fighters, update 1.2 for FNAF World.
You won't get tired of my voice, will you?
So anyway, our character here is kind of screwed, trapped for eternity in a never-ending cycle of torment and death. It should be pretty obvious what's going on here, but I think Jacko Chica really sums up the situation best.
The fire within me burns eternal, and now you shall as well.
That's right, we're trapped in heck. H-E double hockey sticks. Or toothpicks like my family always said, since we valued proper capitalization. And from there, it's just a hop, skip, and a karmic jump away from who we're playing as. None other than Springtrap himself, William Afton. Not only does a one-way ticket to hell follow up on the advice Henry gave us from FNAF 6,
although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
but more voice lines in Custom Night confirm our relationship to each of these characters.
We know who our friends are, and you are not one of them.
This is a callback to FNAF 4's We're Still Your Friends, Do You Still Believe That, but twisted on its head. If our character were someone like, say, Michael Afton, aka the Crying Child, aka another character who can't die, well then Fredbear wouldn't single us out as not his friend. He's not an enemy to Michael because Michael never did anything to hurt him.
I am the fearful reflection of what you have created.
William Afton killed Henry's daughter, who goes on to become the puppet. Night Marion here is the dark reflection of the puppet, thereby confirming that we're playing as William Afton. Even Ballora offers some clues that we're playing as William.
Admit it.
You wanted to let me in.
Bellora's song and sister location was all about William hiding behind walls in the aftermath of his child's death, which left an empty room and an empty tomb in his life.
All I see is an empty room. No more joy, an empty tomb.
He shut everyone else out, but now that we're in William's personal hell, she's able to call him out for all his hidden feelings. William wanted to let the woman that Bellora represents in, but he just couldn't do it thanks to his grief, hence her calling him out for his real desires. You wanted to let me in. So we're a murderer trapped in a personal hell of our own creation, forced to deal with the sins of our past for all eternity. Sound familiar? It should. It was my first ever FNAF theory. No joke, way back in episode 1
sorry, I gotta rewind.
Forced to deal with the sins of our past for all eternity. Sound familiar? It should. It was my series. I predicted it was a game about someone trapped in purgatory, tormented by their crimes for all eternity. Granted, the series had only just begun and the theory tied everything back to a real-life string of murders, but it's actually really awesome to think that we've come full circle. That, from a theory standpoint at least, these videos have circled back around to where it all began. It's poetic. A beautiful, horrific, child-murdery bookend of a story. So thanks, Scott. I have no doubt that you structured your franchise's final send-off that way just so I could have an I told you so moment at the very end after years of getting thwarted by your twisting story. It's very nice of you to throw me a bone. Might as well call me Mangle. More on that next week. But of course, it wouldn't be FNAF if things were just that simple. No, it's not good enough for William to be held in a perpetual state of agony. There's something keeping us here. Looking through all the voice lines, there's one other entity that's mentioned over and over again. The one you should not have killed.
I am remade, but not by you, by the one you should not have killed. Greetings from the fire, and from the one you should not have killed.
Excuse me, what? The one I shouldn't have killed? You mean Voldemort? Oh, sorry, got him confused with He Must Not Be Named. But seriously, the one I shouldn't have killed in a franchise piled high with underage bodies. Okay, yeah, sure. All those other kids, nah, they deserved it. But that one right there, yep, shouldn't have touched him. Now you're damned for all eternity. Sucks to be you. Anyway, this is the big mystery of the game. Who are they talking about? Well, by picking apart clues from all...
Is that weird, Paul?
Big mystery of the game. Who are they talking about? Well, by picking apart clues from all sorts of different locations, we can start piecing together who this one who must stay vague for lore purposes actually is. First, from the rest of the voice lines, we can identify that this character is a male.
I have seen him, the one you shouldn't have killed. He's here and always watching, the one you shouldn't have killed.
Notice how both of them use the pronouns he and him. We also know that this guy specifically has a vendetta against us. To understand that, we have to turn our attention to the true stars of Ultimate Custom Night, the mediocre melodies. Without question, this crew of duct-crawling rejects steal the spotlight in Ultimate Custom Night. Going from WTF are these guys doing here in FNAF 6 to breakout meme stars in Custom Night, Orville Elephant and the gang not only provide important life lessons...
He proceeded to pour me a glass of just ice-cold lemonade. Ooh, you ever mix it with iced tea? You do like... a little half lemonade, half... Ooh, it's so... You should try it some... Well, you can't because you're dead.
They also deliver on huge lore reveals. For the most part, their lines are pretty disposable, but very rarely you'll get a line from them that feels just a bit out of character.
We've only just begun. I will never let you leave. I will never let you rest. Was you? Ninja skills.
And if you listen closely, you'll hear a female voice echoing back what they're saying, almost as if they're puppets under someone else's control.
This is how it feels, and you get to experience it over and over and over again, forever. I will never let you leave.
I will never let you leave.
Now, this voice could be Baby. Not only does she sound similar,
I will never let you leave. I guess you forgot about me.
But a clue may also come from the merch. The Funko action figurines of the characters from FNAF 6 all contain one piece of scrap, baby. Collect all the figurines, collect all the pieces to form the character, which might seem like just a random detail until you consider that they did the same thing with every character in Sister Location, who would then go on to form Ennard. Each one contained a piece that helped to create what would eventually form the larger whole. Just like Ennard himself, a bunch of the other animatronics all rolled into one entity. This is especially important when you consider that a key reveal from the final FNAF novel, The Fourth Closet, is that William Afton created the living Sister Location Funtime animatronics by extracting remnant from a melted conglomeration of all the OG animatronics and injecting the new robots with it. Thus, all the new robots were alive and sharing a piece of the same set of souls, just like if the pieces of Baby/Ennard had been repurposed to form Happy Frog and her friends. That's why Baby's voice would be heard across all of them. Does that make sense? Good. Now throw it away, because there's another explanation here. That this is the voice of the one you should not have killed. As you can tell at this point, Ultimate Custom Night had a huge amount of voice acting. And the nice thing about voice acting is that you need to hire, you know, actors, which means job postings. So of course, for this game, Scott needed to make a ton of casting calls on the site voices.com, all identifying the roles that the actors would be playing. Some of the roles were obvious: Nightmare Balloon Boy, Pig Patch, Withered Chica, etc., etc., all characters that we're familiar with. Other casting calls, though, were a bit more vague. Monster, Character in Whisper, Little Girl, Annoying Girl, Vengeful Spirit. Now, if you track all of the job postings, you can actually identify every single role by who plays them. Monster is Jacko Chica. Character in Whisper is Trash and the Gang. Little Girl is the puppet. Annoying Girl is Dee Dee. Scott kept them vague so as not to ruin any surprises. You can actually identify each and every role, except for one. Vengeful Spirit, played by Tabitha Skanes. It's the only one that doesn't match up to any explicit character in the game. But we know for a fact it exists, since Scott himself left Tabitha an excellent review. 5 stars! Well done, Tabitha. So what is the Vengeful Spirit? Well, according to the casting call, quote, "This is for the voice of a young child who speaks in a whisper from the shadows." That sounds a lot like the voice that's whispering in the background of our merry band of rejects. This child is in control and is toying with the player, who's helpless to change their situation or prevent their inevitable end. Yeah, well, being trapped in HE double hockey sticks will do that to ya. The gender should not be immediately clear. It should work as either a young boy or a young girl, and you're welcome to do readings leaning one way or another. Ding ding ding, ladies and gentlemen, we have our winner. A puppeteer that's manipulating things from the shadows. A spirit who's out for revenge. A spirit who just so happens to occasionally show its face during game over screens. Yes, that creepy image of a face that's been haunting thumbnails of Ultimate Custom Night, that is the face of our vengeful spirit. A spirit who, based on its last line, has an axe to grind and intends to enact revenge by keeping us tormented for all eternity.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
He tried to release you, but I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here? Yikes! Somebody's gotta get themselves a new hobby. But this is an important line, since by now many of you have probably seen the Old Man Consequences Easter egg. If you set the character Old Man Consequences to level 1 difficulty and then complete his minigame, you get taken through a glitch to Old Man Consequences Pond, a character from FNAF World who encourages the spirit to, quote, "leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul. There's nothing else." He's encouraging the angry spirit to finally rest, to give it up, to move on, instead of just chasing down the demon, William Afton, and spending eternity enacting revenge. But that all leads to the question, who is this vengeful spirit? The one William should not have killed? Well, it's Golden Freddy. For proof, look no further than the final cutscene of the game. If you manage to get the nearly impossible score of 9,800, 49 animatronics at full difficulty, you see Golden Freddy in his FNAF 1 form twitching. He's twitching just like Springtrap did in the trailers to FNAF 3. Someone else who refused to give up, to pass on. Someone who always comes back. And just to dispel any confusion here, Golden Freddy isn't the crying child. This confirms it. Golden Freddy is actually a victim that we've never actually seen outside of the FNAF 3 minigames, nor will ever see outside of that face in the vent. But more on that next video, that final timeline episode I got cooking up. If you want to make sure that you see it, hit subscribe now, that way you don't miss it, because seriously, that is the one that wraps everything up. If there was ever a time to subscribe, now is that time. But anyway, Golden Freddy is the soul that's still trapped, one that refuses to let go of his hate, his rage. We even hear it in his line. He tried to release us, but I'm not gonna let that happen, no matter how many times they burn us. In FNAF 3, the puppet tried to release everyone through the Happiest Day minigame. Fazbear Fright was burned down in an attempt to cleanse Freddy's. Pizzeria Simulator was burned to the ground. None of it has worked. The spirit of revenge is and always will be there until he chooses to let go. That's why he's still twitching as he fades into the darkness. That's why his eyes are still white as he disappears. He is choosing to remain here, to continue tormenting William, to ignore Old Man Consequences, encouraging him to move on to the next life. You know, this might be what Scott truly meant when he said that 50-20 mode in this game was impossible. Not just that it would be unbelievably difficult to overcome, which, let's face it, it is, but that there's no victory here. That no matter how good of a player you are, there is no winning this game because there is no escape. That even if you play it perfectly, William is trapped, and there is no happy ending for Golden Freddy. In fact, you playing the game is continuing Golden Freddy's cycle of revenge. Old Man Consequence's message might be for Golden Freddy. Absolutely, rest your soul. There is nothing else, but it's also probably directed at us. I mean, we play and play and play this game for hours upon hours upon hours, achieving higher and higher and higher stats in a game that's incredibly difficult, and what do we get from it? A cutscene that's kind of underwhelming, actually. Perhaps Old Man Consequence's message was for Golden Freddy, sure, but also for us. Rest your own soul. There is nothing else. There is no deeper ending here. There is no satisfaction. This is it. And by choosing to play, we keep William's cycle of torment alive. We are literally Golden Freddy forcing William through this over and over and over again, refusing to move on, refusing to accept that there is nothing else. It's perhaps the most satisfying, unsatisfying conclusion in all of gaming. And as far as your gameplay affecting character decisions, well, it doesn't get any more seamless than that. In the end, the truth is as plain as day. You are Golden Freddy. Next week, the grand conclusion as I break down literally everything else in this game and all the other games and the books as we try to piece together one mega final timeline. I told Stephanie the other day that I was reworking the FNAF timeline. She's like, what is this, like the 80th time? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. So place your bets now as to where you think the events are gonna fall. Make sure you subscribe so you're notified of the new video. And most importantly of all, remember, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for proving me right for a change, Scott.
Top 3 reasons why now is the best time to play Honkai Star Rail. Number 1, if you're seeing this video,
we're about a quarter
that means it's
Hi, I'm Masahiro Sakurai. Today, I'd like to introduce you to the new Super Smash Bros. Game for the Nintendo Switch. Many fighters have appeared in the series. I'm sure you're all eager to find out who will be joining the roster this time. Please, take a look.
Where's the nugget here? Dude, he's changed his intro at least 5 times.
The William Afton of
YouTube.
YouTube.
There's 25 videos I've watched.
So here's here's something crazy. You know how every FNAF game tends to have 5 main nights, a bonus 6th night that gets you more lore hints, and then a challenge mode 7th night where you customize all the animatronics? Well, look at the games. We have 5 main games bearing the 5 nights title, a bonus 6th game that was mostly for lore, and now a 7th standalone release where you customize the animatronics. The game releases directly mirror the gameplay. Either Scott is a mad genius or I'm thinking about things way too hard.
You try to read into every little thing and find meaning in everything anyone says, you'll just drive yourself crazy.
I heard you last time, Mr. Hippo. But guess what, you Barney reject? Reading into every little thing is the only way to have this series make any sort of sense whatsoever. Case in point, today's episode. With the final novel out and Ultimate Custom Night picked to shreds, it finally feels like the story of FNAF is at its end. Or at least the Afton storyline is at its end. The series will probably come back to tell another story in the same universe later. I mean, it's exactly what Scott did with FNAF 4, the quote-unquote final chapter, ... of the original FNAF story. I see what you did there, Scotty. It's the final chapter of the original story. But oh no, friends, he wasn't done. He even ended that teaser with a question mark if you brighten that screen up enough. Man, Scott, you really wanted to leave the door open for more games in the series, didn't ya? You were milking it more than I was. Or, I guess we're both milkmaids at the teat of Freddy Fazcow. Anyway, as they say in FNAF World, the pieces are in place for us. So it's time to take one final step back and put every single one of those pieces together into this, my final timeline for the final FNAF game. Though, let me save you some work. If you brighten the image you see on screen right now, you'll see that there's a question mark there, since, you know,
I always come back.
And if he comes back, well, I gotta pull myself a Samurai Freddy and pursue the anime Fox of Truth wherever it may lead. Let's do this. Now, putting together a final timeline of events for this series is incredibly challenging and requires us covering a lot of really minute details from literally every element the series has ever released. This is my longest, most involved theory in 7 years, covering every square inch of the series. So fair warning that this episode is not for the faint of heart. It is extreme. A way for me to simultaneously flex my knowledge of the minutiae of this series, all while trying to come up with a satisfactory answer to pretty much every question it has ever thrown our way. And of course, there are some questions that don't have clean answers, which I'll be calling out for you as I go. So for those of you who want to take the challenge and attempt a timeline on your own, let me first explain my thought process. As I was writing this episode, there are 3 hard and fast rules that I applied. First, it's important to note that I put greater emphasis on information that was released more recently in the series. While, yes, everything in the series is important, by FNAF 4 and even more so Sister Location, we can assume that Scott had a complete picture of the story in his mind. It's easy to forget that FNAF 1 was going to be Scott's final game after years of trying to be a game designer and hitting dead ends. Do you really think that he imagined a lore so deep that it would cover 8 games, 5 books, and countless teasers? That he predicted his story would be so massively popular that it would involve undead purple people way back when we were all just making memes about Foxy Swiggity Swooty coming for that booty? Probably not. So it's safe to assume that the newest information we're getting in the games is the most accurate in pointing to the final story he's looking to tell. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, adhering to key dates and events. Now, there isn't much that's certain in this story, which means that the things we do know must serve as fixed points that the other details fit around. We know for a fact from FNAF 1 phone calls that the animatronics are allowed to walk around freely until the bite of 87. We know from FNAF 3 calls that the golden spring-lock suits are eventually retired to a back room after a tragedy at a sister location, the FNAF 4 Bite, which itself takes place in 1983. FNAF 3 also tells us that at some point William Afton tries to dismantle the robots, whose spirits rebel, causing him to become Springtrap, eventually getting himself sealed up behind a wall until the workers at Fazbear Fright discover his body and set him loose again. Details like those have to be our guideposts if we're having any hopes of getting anywhere in the story. And lastly, rule number 3, realizing that this isn't just a simple linear timeline. It's clearly established in the games that multiple Fazbear locations exist at the same time, and that the events in one affect what happens in other locations. For proof, just look at Phone Guy in FNAF 3.
Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Right now, we have 2 specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit. After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures, The company has deemed the suit temporarily unfit for employees.
This not only tells us that the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had 2 golden suits, but also that the first Freddy's was open at the same time as the FNAF 4 Freddy's. The spring lock failure in the FNAF 4 location prompted the yellow suits to be retired in the FNAF 1 location. In short, a lot of these events overlap. Restaurants often stay open for years beyond what we see in the games, and everything weaves together in a way that's much more complicated than simply saying, this restaurant opened, kids died, it closed. The next one opened, kids died again, it closed. In all honesty, I suppose you could simplify it to that level, but we're not going to. I am holding myself to a higher standard. A slightly higher standard, but a higher standard nonetheless. So with those 3 logical rules in place, let's get analyzing. To begin, we have to identify who William's first victim was. Now, I've covered FNAF a lot, but in all my theories, one thing has remained consistent since FNAF 2, that the puppet was first. Henry's daughter. She is the character who gives life to all the other animatronics, so it would just make sense for her to be victim numero uno. But outside of that, it's always been just an assumption. And now that we've seen the event actually take place in the games, I think I've been wrong about it this entire time. Think about it. We have proof that William kills Henry's daughter in FNAF 6, but as I talked about in a previous theory, we see that later that night, Afton goes to a place called Junior's where he's turned away at the door. Now, why would Scott show us this? FNAF 6 was all about tying up loose ends. He's not just gonna throw in a random bar to establish that the Mustard Man is an alcoholic or anything. He's doing it to establish a timeline. The only time we hear of anyone being turned away from any building for any reason in this series is in FNAF 2.
From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous employees.
And the name Juniors makes sense in Scott's classic way of giving us clues that are meant to clarify things, but really just end up confusing all of us. Remember, FNAF 2's location is the Grand Reopening, a second Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria location, a junior location, if you will. And lastly, to further solidify the puppet coming later in the timeline, remember why Freddy's closed in the first place. It wasn't due to murders or animatronics going haywire. According to the FNAF 1 newspapers, people just got weirded out by a place where kids disappeared. Quote, after a long struggle to stay in business after the tragedy that took place there many years ago, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has announced that it'll close by year's end, end quote. This all means that the missing children's incident where 5 kids go missing at a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza must be the first event of the timeline. William Afton uses the Spring Bonnie suit to lure 5 kids to the back employees-only safe rooms that we hear about in FNAF 3, hiding their dead bodies in the animatronic suits. We can even figure out the order of who was killed when based on clues hidden in Ultimate Custom Night. We know with 100% certainty that Chica was first based on one of her death lines.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
That's about as explicit as you get with these games. From a storytelling standpoint, I hate that Chica's first because it really should have been Golden Freddy, so he could be the first spirit killed and the final spirit to haunt Afton in Custom Night, but whatever. Chica, aka Susie, is death number 1. She's lured away by Afton, telling her that her dog died. We see it in FNAF 6's Fruity Maze. We also read about it in the 4th closet. Quote, beside them was a little girl with blonde curls. I heard Daddy say he was hit by a car, but I knew it wasn't true. Bonnie told me it wasn't true. He said he found my puppy. And did he take you to your puppy? He took me, but I don't remember. My name's Susie. We even hear about it in the Chica anime cutscenes from Custom Night.
So, I just realized Day Shift at Freddy's is like more lore accurate than I originally thought.
I told him that someone ran over his dog in front of my house.
Jeez, Scott, I know we were all looking for answers, but man, you beat that one over the head, didn't ya? Not that I'm complaining, but that one was a bit overly obvious, and then all the other ones are just so damn obscure.
Day Shift at Freddy's, the 3rd game, in the box, it has Susie's scarf.
Just gotta find a better balance here, man. From there, we know that 4 other kids get taken and stuffed into suits. We know their names based on the gravestones at the end of FNAF 6. Gabriel, Fritz, Jeremy, and Grass. Hey, who are we to judge what other people name their kids? Probably some celebrity's kid. Oh, you must meet my children. This is Apple. audio science, and grass. All joking aside, though, loyal theorists will remember this last grave was giving me a lot of trouble during a past theory. You see, this book, the FNAF Survival Logbook, holds a ton of reveals about the franchise, but they're all hidden in code. Some I was able to deduce, some left me stumped. But a few hours after releasing my video covering the book, the mystery was solved by the brilliant deduction of game theorist subreddit user DPowerful1. DPowerful1 used the numbers that I had found, 52, 39, 15, 7, 2, 10, 11, 8, and 11, and put them not into an alphabet grid for ciphers like I'd been doing and like the book was clearly hinting towards, but instead put them into the word search, of all places. Using the numbers as coordinates in the word search, you could spell the name Cassidy, a name that must belong to Golden Freddy based on the repeated use of Golden Freddy's signature line of "It's me" throughout the book, the gravestone imagery which lines up with the 5th mystery gravestone at the end of FNAF 6, and a mention of Cassidy in the final FNAF novel, The Fourth Closet. And that would be more than enough proof, but it's not all. In the novel, Cassidy is described as a girl with black hair. And what do we see in the logbook? The puppet giving cake to a little girl with black hair. The only human child in the logbook, no less. And it's happening on a page talking about your happiest day. A direct reference to the happiest day minigame from FNAF 3, where the puppet gives cake to Golden Freddy in an effort to release its soul. You can even hear a girlish laugh every time Golden Freddy is summoned way back in FNAF 1. Literally everything about this reveal lines up. Everything, of course, except for the pronoun of he being used to talk about the one you should not have killed throughout Custom Night, which, as we established last episode, is referring to Golden Freddy. But consider this, Golden Freddy is a male character. He's Freddy Fazbear, he's Fredbear, regardless of the spirit that possesses it. So the gender confusion works here. Scott even used that to his advantage in the casting call, where he was specifically looking for auditions where, quote, the gender should not be immediately clear. It should work as either a young boy or a young girl. FNAF, teaching kids that gender is fluid, but only if you spend 4 years picking apart its obscure lore. Yeah, by the way, FNAF is 4 years old this August. It's crazy, right? Wow, I've been doing this for a long time. The last thing to say about Golden Freddy is proving that he gets possessed here, at the first Freddy Fazbear Pizza location rather than in FNAF 4 like most of us have assumed in the past. You see, in Ultimate Custom Night, you get an item called a death coin that can eliminate one animatronic from the game. But if you use it on Golden Freddy, you don't eliminate him from the game, you just get jump scared by Fredbear, and then hear some strange sounds. Huh. It almost sounds like Fredbear is underwater, which we all know is gonna be terrible for those spring locks. Anyway, I played around with those audio files and got him to hear. Laughter, obviously. Let's find a suit that's right for you. And there was more fantasy and fun where I came from. That last one feels really random, right? Like, I'm an angry spirit who just killed you, but let me tell you about my love of fantasy, fairies, and long walks on the beach first. I'm very in touch with my emotions. However, the phrase fantasy and fun is a direct reference to the first game in the franchise, where Phone Guy welcomes you to
Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life.
It's Scott telling us that Golden Freddy is the same spirit who speaks to the crying child via the Fredbear plush at the end of FNAF 4, but who dates all the way back to the first pizzeria and the missing children's incident. Phew, you got all that? Good, because that's the easy stuff. Well, not easy, obviously, considering I'm on page 4 of this script and I've only just talked about the first event in the series. But there is consistent logic and evidence to back it all up. However, it's at this point that things get messy from a timeline standpoint. You see, right now there are two dangling threads of events that directly conflict with each other. One, the first Freddy Fazbear location has to close so it can reopen sometime before 1987. However, it has to remain open at least until 1983 when the FNAF 4 bite happens, the event that prompts Phone Guy to call back to the FNAF 1 location informing them that the Springlock suits are being retired.
Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Right now we have two specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit. After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures, the company has deemed the suits temporarily unfit for employees.
This is important because Phone Guy later makes a point of saying that the Spring Bonnie suit is still being moved.
Management has also been made aware that the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been noticeably moved.
Which implies that Afton is still using it to kill kids, aka the missing children's incident is still going on even after the bite of 1983. That would all be fine except for point number 2. According to Hand Unit and Sister Location, Circus Baby's Pizza World is opened after Freddy Fazbear's is closed.
Due to the massive success and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Again, this wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for the empty girl's bedroom that we see in FNAF 4. As we established in a previous episode using the FNAF survival logbook, the crying child is Michael Afton, which would make this his sister's room, Elizabeth Afton, the girl who gets herself clawed and goes on to possess Baby on the opening day of Baby's Pizzeria. That's why she's missing and why her room is empty. But that can't happen if Freddy's is still open, and Freddy's can't be closed until the bite of 83 causes the spring locks to be retired so that phone guy can make his call. You see the problem there? Do you understand why creating a timeline of all this stuff is so darn complicated? Anyway, to move forward, we have to apply rule number 1 that I talked about earlier and throw out some of the phone guy information in order for the events to work. Freddy Fazbear's first location closes in the aftermath of the missing children's incident. With no pizzeria to serve as his murder den, Afton tries to launch a new restaurant, Circus Baby's Pizza World. It's important to note that this is an actual restaurant and not the underground rental service you see in Sister Location. We'll get to that one much later. Based on the name, we can be confident that this place has a clown aesthetic, which makes it likely that all the animatronics who don't fit into the Freddy Fazbear series of restaurants were made specifically for this place. The Mini-Renas, Balloon Boy, JJ, Dee Dee, and of course, the star attraction, Baby. Notice how they all even look alike. However, on day 1 of the restaurant opening, Elizabeth, Afton's daughter, finds herself alone with Baby and gets herself clawed. We know that it's closed on day 1, both from Baby's story and Sister Location.
Did you know that I was on stage once? It wasn't for very long. Only one day.
And from this hidden news story about a supposed gas leak posted on Scott's website in the lead up to the release of the game. This in turn explains a lot of the weirdness going on in FNAF 4. Why Elizabeth's room is empty. Why Michael Afton has nightmares of animatronics with stomach mouths. And why William locks Michael in his room and has so many surveillance cameras following him around. He doesn't want what happened to his daughter to also happen to his youngest son. You see why it's so important for Circus Baby's Pizza World to happen before the events of FNAF 4? Before 1983? A lot of pieces fit in place if it does. Anyway, in the aftermath of the tragedy, he buries Baby and most of the other humanoid characters underground in a facility that we'll eventually explore in Sister Location. The rest go on to the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, which is set to reopen. But first, running parallel to all of this, and I mean all of it, is Fredbear's Family Diner. Not the sister location we visit in the game Sister Location, but the only sister location actually called a sister location by Phone Guy during his FNAF 3 calls about spring locks.
An unfortunate incident at the sister location.
We know for a fact that Fredbear's Family Diner is the FNAF 4 location based on this purple hat teaser that came out with the release of the game. Right in the image, look down in the bottom right-hand corner and fill in the blanks and you get yourself property of Fredbear's Family Diner. We also know that it should fit here in the timeline because of one small detail that Scott made note of with the release of FNAF 4's Halloween edition. While Nightmare Puppet and Nightmare Mangle weren't canon, he made it clear that Nightmare Balloon Boy was. Now, if I'm right about Circus Baby's Pizza World and the red-cheeked design of its characters, then the crying child would have come across Balloon Boy. He existed at this point in the timeline.
Yeah,
but
and that's
because
why you
both
can
the
still
Puppet
play
and Mangle don't exist until the FNAF 2
the Halloween
location,
update
neither
for
of them
FNAF
would be
4
appearing in his
canon.
nightmares. Therefore, not canon. Therefore, the timeline continues to make sense. So
Or
at
at
this
least
point, we
not
know
in
how the
Baby's
story
canon.
goes. William is working there as what appears to be a suit technician. Michael Afton, aka the crying child, has witnessed his friends and maybe even his sister get killed. I mean, he's even locked in the supply closet with what appears to be the body of Golden Freddy.
Safety is top priority at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which is why the classic suits are being retired to an appropriate location while being looked at by our technician.
At the end of the week, at his birthday party, he gets shoved into Fredbear's mouth by his brother, and crunch! He dead, son! The spirits of his dead friends, all 5 of them, remind them that they're still here for him, and the whole incident goes down in history as the bite of 83, based on both the TV Easter egg in FNAF 4, and the code in Sister Location's secret room. Oh, but again, it's here that we hit another little wrinkle. You see, in the FNAF survival logbook, it asks Michael whether his favorite ride was the carousel, a feature that was only present in the FNAF 2 restaurant. This also coincides with my hypothesis earlier about the Midnight Motorist minigame and Junior's being another name for Freddy's version 2. It would make sense that that place that he's going to is indeed him running out to the new Freddy Fazbear's location. But we know Michael gets bit in 1983 and that the FNAF 2 location is open in 1987 based on the paychecks you see in the game. Fortunately though, there's an elegant solution this time. The FNAF 2 location is just open earlier than we thought. Remember, Fredbear's Family Diner being open doesn't preclude a new Freddy's location from also being open at the same time. The new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria is just open earlier than we all thought, at least as early as 1983, and continuing through 1987 when a new series of murders happens and the Fright of 87 gets it closed down. This all allows Michael to visit that place again, have the carousel be his favorite, but still die in 1983. Because William doesn't want to lose another child, especially since he's in his own killing spree, he puts security cameras everywhere and uses the illusion sound discs first introduced in the Twisted Ones novel to scare Michael away from the restaurant. That's what he means by he'll be sorry when he gets back. William is intentionally locking him in his room, giving him nightmares, hence why Michael is so scared by the time we see him in FNAF 4. Additionally, Ultimate Custom Night proves that the nightmare animatronics are just that, nightmares, illusions.
This time, there is more than an illusion to fear.
Perhaps you know me as the Kung Fu Panda.
I am given flesh to be your tormentor.
Both these lines indicate that before, they were just an illusion, they had no flesh. But now, in the latest game, they are real. So contrary to popular belief, these things were never real animatronics, just a glorified way for William to keep his son away from his murder locations. Except, obviously, it didn't work. Despite his best, well, maybe not his best, but definitely his most stalkerish efforts, Michael gets crunched and dies. A fact that becomes very problematic for the timeline considering that Michael Afton clearly survived till the end of the games. We see him in Sister Location. We watch him get scooped. We hear about him burning in FNAF 6. How is all of that possible if he's already dead? Surprisingly, there is a way to solve it, and I have the evidence to prove it, but sadly it'll have to wait until next time. This ended up being a 12-page script, which there's no way that we can do all in 1 week. So in the words of Dee Dee, how unfortunate, this is a thing I hate to do, but the rest has to go in a part 2. Anyway, don't worry, we'll get it out as fast as possible. It's already written. I just need to divide this up for editing purposes. In the meantime, though, make sure you jump scare that subscribe button to, well...
So, let me check this real quick. Sponsor. If you had already gotten scooped.
Roblox is way more fun when you have Robux, but Robux cost money.
Shut up.
Dear Diary, yesterday was so amazing. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who are you gonna call? Psyche friend Fred. This time you'll have to keep up with me. Oh, never mind. Is the purple man the phone guy?
Exotic.
But butters.
Not the fan.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where, before we close the book on our final FNAF theory, it's time to open the book on new Back to School merch. See a sport and some new Game Theory green. Now then, let's wrap up FNAF shit.
Let's just jump into it.
When last we left things, we'd covered everything up through the second Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria location. Things like why the missing children's incident must be the first event of the timeline, the identity of Golden Freddy, why Circus Baby's Pizza World has to come earlier in the timeline than most people expect, and a quick review over how Michael Afton is the crying child from FNAF 4. But all of that left us with a big question. If Michael Afton is the crying child who gets himself bit, then how is he able to come back later in the timeline for games like Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator? Well, this is where the books once again come in to give us the solution that no one would have predicted. You see, at the end of FNAF 4, we get the lines, "We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? I will put you back together." We've never actually established who speaks those words. Ultimately, the best guess that we had was the puppet. But here's the thing, it can't be the puppet. Based on this, my final and best timeline of events, William hasn't killed Henry's daughter yet. The puppet isn't possessed yet. Instead, that line is more likely coming from William. It's him making a fateful promise to his dead son. "I will put you back together." The thing is, he takes that promise a lot more literally than any of us would have ever suspected. He is literally promising to physically put his son back together as a robot. And we know from the final FNAF novel, The Fourth Closet, that William in that story is obsessed with bringing life to these machines. And even more importantly, we know that in Scott's vision of this world, robots who think they're human and don't realize that they're robots is a real thing. A huge twist at the end of the final FNAF novel is that the main character, Charlie, Henry's daughter, is actually revealed to be one of these sorts of robots. And not just a single robot, mind you. Charlie is one in a series of 4 robots. That's what the title of the book is referencing. She was kidnapped and killed by Afton as a 3-year-old girl, and in his grief over losing his daughter, Henry built 4 robotic versions of her, each one slightly older than the last, implanting each version with memories so that she could grow up just like a normal kid. Quote, "Charlie would be a baby, then a little girl, and then a sulky teenager, then at last she would be a woman. She would be finished. Perfect." End quote. It's weird, definitely, and it opens up a whole heck of a lot of plot holes in the novel, but I honestly think that this might be what happens to Michael Afton in the games. Clearly, he dies during the bite of 83. The survival logbook confirms this over and over and over again. That is locked in. But Michael is literally rebuilt by Afton, put back together by William. The books allude to it, it fits with the timeline, and most importantly of all, it explains why he doesn't die after getting scooped in Sister Location.
I should be dead, but I'm not.
Why his memory is so foggy throughout the survival logbook, but most importantly of all, why he can only die through fire. Have you ever stopped to consider that? Michael Afton lives through getting himself scooped at the end of Sister Location, but passes on just like all the other animatronics at the end of FNAF 6, when the remnant in his body is burned away. Remember, based on our timeline, William Afton has already seen his daughter die in Circus Baby, and has also probably seen that her spirit possesses the suit, so he knows it's possible for a living spirit to be inside these robots. It actually might be why he sends Michael down to explore Sister Location in the first place.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I put her back together, just like you asked me to.
He knows that Michael's sister, his daughter, is still down there, so he's aware of what she is, and it might be his way of breaking the news to Michael. "Hey there, kiddo, there was something I was meaning to tell you, but unfortunately, I'm kinda trapped in a wall right now. So go down into that creepy cellar I have and pay a visit to your sister. She might prompt some really existential revelations." And lastly, consider this. In the bonus cutscenes for Sister Location, Baby establishes that she knows that Michael can't die.
You won't die, you won't die, you won't die, you won't die.
So she might just recognize that they're one and the same. This insane sounding theory, and trust me, I recognize that it sounds completely bonkers, may actually tie into the mystery of the FNAF 4 box. What's in it? It might actually be Michael Afton's body. Yeah, remember I just said that in The Fourth Closet, the main character was actually the third in a series of 4 robots? Well, she almost gets herself killed at the end of Book 2, and is discovered midway through Book 3, locked in a box that sounds very similar to the one that appears at the end of FNAF 4. Quote, "John moved to a large green chest, the paint almost entirely worn off. There was no lock. John knelt beside it, found the handle, and heaved it open, then shuddered. It's Charlie," he said hoarsely. "In the chest. She was locked in a box. That's insane. She was locked in a box. Who knows for how long? Days? months, end quote. I actually know how long she was trapped in the box. It was 6 months. So anyway, is this definitive proof of what's in the box and that Michael Afton is a robot? No. But it's definitely circumstantial evidence. And think about this. Remember that Scott kept the box locked because he was worried that the fan base wouldn't accept the answer to what was inside of it. Well, can you blame him? If he kept a broken robot kid inside of the box, that would probably upset a few people because at this point in the series, it would literally come out of nowhere. Up to FNAF 4, this was just the story of a creepy, haunted animatronic pizzeria. Nothing about robot kids or anything like that. The last stretch of this series just went into some weird directions. Anyway, with the bite of 83, Fredbear's Family Diner closes, leaving only Freddy Fazbear's second location, Junior's, a new, larger location with upgraded security in the form of the toy animatronics. But after all the missing children from their last endeavor, Henry wanted to take an extra special precaution to further protect his daughter. He installed an upgraded surveillance system in the form of security puppets, specifically programmed to watch one child, his daughter. As an added nod to where security puppet fits into the timeline, Scott very clearly included the puppet's signature gift box as part of the visuals in its minigame in FNAF 6, a box that only occurs in the FNAF 2 location. You can even see what looks to be wanted posters in the back alley, thereby establishing that a crime had been committed in this area previously. William Afton returns and, because he's a prime suspect in the missing children's incident, is not allowed back at the pizzeria. That's why we see him turned away at the door to Junior's. As a result, he's forced to kill Henry's daughter outside, behind the facility. Her soul goes on to possess the security puppet, and she proceeds to give life to all the other lost souls still trapped in the original 5 animatronics. We know this based on the Save Them minigame, where we see the puppet searching for someone to help the dead children lying around the pizzeria. The toy animatronics are standing on stage lifeless, but most tellingly of all, we see the original versions of Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie inactive in the parts and supply room, and yet Freddy is somehow able to freely move around. This shows us that some of the OG animatronics haven't been given gifts, given life yet. It's also worth noting that on rare instances, we get an Easter egg of Golden Freddy, broken there on the floor, his ghostly self phasing into and out of existence. And that's not all. Get close to him, and for a brief moment, you catch a glimpse of a white dot appearing in his eye. Golden Freddy has the spirit of Cassidy already in him, except there are 2 problems. First, he's a spring-lock suit. Unlike the others, he can't freely move around because he's not kept in animatronic mode. Despite the puppet's best attempts, Cassidy will be forever trapped in a suit that is perpetually slumped over. But secondly, the yellow Golden Freddy suit is being kept, like we saw, in the FNAF 4 location. Hence why in FNAF 2 and then onward in the series, he's forced to remain as just a spirit. Afton continues to sneak into the pizzeria disguised as a security guard, using his signature spring-lock suit and crank to kill kids. This prompts the animatronics to get angry and attack anyone in a security guard uniform. As we see throughout the FNAF novels, and as the puppet reinforces in Ultimate Custom Night,
the others are like animals, but I am very aware.
So they're not rationally thinking, which results in night guard turned day guard Jeremy Fitzgerald getting his frontal lobe bit in an event known as the Bite of 87, and henceforth animatronics are no longer allowed to free roam in the restaurants. In total, another 5 children die in the FNAF 2 location, again shown through the Save Them minigame, before the place is shut down and the toy animatronics get scrapped, since, let's be honest, they were all kind of crap at their job anyway. But more importantly, it's at this point that Afton realizes the power of children's souls. It's here where he first sees the animatronics moving freely, possessed by the spirits of the dead children and activated by the puppet. And here, through the end of the series, his mission changes. He's no longer just killing kids. He's now looking to actively harness that power for himself so he can be immortal. It's a goal that he expresses in the 4th closet. Quote, "You killed them. They died in the suits. Their bodies were bound inside along with their souls. The spirit follows the flesh, it would seem, and also the pain. If I wish to become my own immortal creation, my body must lead my spirit to its eternal home." This affects all his future actions in the series. So when the withered animatronics get sent back to the FNAF 1 location for storage and the possible reopening of the pizzeria, William tracks them back to dismantle them and discover their power. This leads to the cutscenes from FNAF 3, where William systematically lures the original animatronics to the back safe room one by one, only to dismantle them. Before, these cutscenes seemed super random. It just seemed like him trying to get rid of the animatronics for reasons. But now, thanks to the novels, we actually know why he did it, to dissect the robots and experiment on them. And it's these experiments that end up producing the Funtime animatronics. One big lingering question mark of the series was the nature of the Funtime animatronics deep underground during Sister Location. How were they alive? Were they possessed by more dead kids? Well, we finally have our answer there, courtesy of Candy Cadet and the Fourth Closet. Now, back in FNAF 6, Candy Cadet's stories were a bit of a mystery. Each one had to do with 5 things becoming one thing. 5 keys melted together, 5 orphans sewn together to fit into one coffin, 5 kittens sacrificed and then combined to fit into one shoebox. It seemed like it was referring to Ennard, the amalgamation of all the other animatronic parts, but the math was always kinda wonky. Ennard consisted of Baby, Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy, which is just 4 animatronics. Maybe if you squinted at it, you would include the Bonnie puppet, but that seemed like a stretch. And as a result, we just weren't quite sure what was going on with those stories. Luckily, the release of the Fourth Closet has cleared this mystery up. Quote, a single figure stood still amongst the chaos, out of phase with the surroundings. At first, it seemed to be a man bent over a table, but as Carlton's head throbbed with waves of confusion, the man became a yellow rabbit, not standing over a table, but over 5 children, tied together as one. He knew exactly what he was looking at. The endoskeletons of the original Freddy's animatronics, welded and melted together, immobile and featureless, and still inhabited by the spirits of the children who had been murdered inside of them so many years ago. Still filled with life and motion and thought, all trapped, all in terrible pain. End quote. So in the FNAF 3 cutscenes, we see William dismantle the animatronics. From there, he melts down their endoskeletons to discover the secret of their everlasting life. He then uses this molten spirit metal, Remnant, to infuse life into his new creations, the Funtime animatronics. Quote again, the table's surface was glowing orange and the hot metal hissed. William took a syringe from the woman's hand and thrust it into the squirming thing forcefully. He drew the plunger up, holding the needle steady as the syringe filled with molten substance. He staggered back toward the bear. The man again pried open the heavy chest plate of the standing, broken bear, then carefully inserted the syringe he held directly into the chest cavity and began to press the plunger down. What this and the Candy Cadet stories tell us is that the Funtimes weren't just possessed by new kids, they were created from the remnant of the original 5, fused together into one chaotic, confused spiritual mess. Like Ennard said from his original teaser for Sister Location, there's a piece of me in every body. From those experiments, William is able to open Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals, the underground facility from Sister Location. Using Remnant, he brings life to animatronics specifically designed to lure and trap kids so he can have more test subjects for his experiments. He then rents the robots out to special events and other locations. Why isn't there a Funtime Chica in Sister Location? Simply because she's rented out. We see this hidden in the source code to Scott's website around the time of Sister Location's release. Chica's party world is a separate location, a client of Afton Robotics, and as such, she's not being kept underground with the rest of them. That's why she's gone, only to then reappear in FNAF 6 and Custom Night. But there was one thing that William Afton didn't anticipate in all his plans: the spirits of the children wanting revenge. Now that they were freed from their animatronic prisons, they corner William in the safe room of the first Freddy Fazbear's restaurant, forcing him to hide out in the Golden Bonnie suit, which snaps shut, almost killing him, but not quite. It just transforms him into Springtrap. The restaurant seals the safe room and everything inside to escape liability.
The previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this one.
To me, this seems like the actions of Henry. Who else would seal a bloody, living body in a hidden room in a pizzeria? Henry seems like the best bet, but we can't know for sure. Regardless, Afton is locked back there until the year 2023 when Fazbear Fright opens. The phone dude discovers the hidden room and sets Afton, now Springtrap, loose once more. From there, we know pretty much everything else. Springtrap haunts Fazbear Fright only to have it burned down. It seems to me that this again was Henry's doing. The Ultimate Custom Night Samurai cutscenes symbolize their relationship. William Afton is the fox, and Freddy is Henry, the bear of vengeance. The last line of dialogue in these samurai cutscenes says it best: I will pursue the fox. I will find him in whatever land he has fled to. It is my destiny, and it is his. Throughout the games, Henry is constantly trying to thwart William in escalating fashion. He starts by getting him kicked out of the FNAF 2 location. He then tries to get him arrested in the aftermath of the missing children's incident. He traps him bleeding and spring-locked in the walls of Freddy Fazbear's, and finally he sets him on fire not just once in Fazbear Fright, but a second time in Pizzeria Simulator. Meanwhile, the rebuilt Michael Afton, Michael version 2.0, searches for his dad to get some answers. He starts in Sister Location, meets Baby, but falls victim to the plot of the furious tangle of spirits held in the various Funtime animatronics. Together, they form Ennard and scoop Michael's body in an attempt to escape their prison. The scooping plan works, but Michael survives because, remember, he's a robot. Baby seems to know this based on her repeated use of "You won't die, you won't die, you won't die." More in need of answers than ever before, Michael promises his father, which leads us at last to FNAF 6. Even though the puppet tried to free the spirits of the dead children in FNAF 3, it doesn't quite work. This is because the spirits were no longer complete, with parts of their souls now trapped in the Funtime animatronics, which themselves are now in the form of Molten Freddy. This is why paragraph 4 is such a big deal throughout FNAF 6. Based on the insanity ending blueprints, paragraph 4 stipulates that all creatures containing Remnant must be in the pizzeria by the end of the week, so that when it burns, everyone goes with it. All remaining Remnant must be purged in order for the souls to finally be set free. Michael accepts the role as night guard at the simulated pizzeria. Henry summons all the animatronics there, burns it all to the ground, and finally releases everyone, including condemning William to hell. Well, he didn't release everyone. Golden Freddy, still a vengeful spirit, has a bone to pick with Willy, so she traps him in purgatory, forcing him to suffer for eternity at the hands of the monsters he created. And despite Old Man Consequences telling her to relax, she won't quit, hence her soul still being in Golden Freddy's twitching eyes as he fades out into the darkness and as the series hits its final notes. I don't know about you, but between these last two videos, I think that's about as thorough as you could possibly want. So there you have it, FNAF theorists. As deep of a deep dive as I can go, trying to answer as many questions as possible, all while putting things into an order that makes sense, while also accounting for as much of the evidence as possible. Is it a perfect timeline? No, but I don't think there can be. I think Mr. Hippo's custom night lines point us in that direction.
I suppose if a person just wants to talk, then it's best to not announce that you're telling a story. Telling a story does come with its own pressures and expectations, I suppose. After all, if you're just talking to a friend, and there's no more expectations than if you were talking into the wind. Words by themselves aren't expected to carry, aren't expected to stick. But if you announce you're telling a story, well then, there'd better be a point to it all, you know?
And conversely, at some point, you just analyze down a story to the point of meaninglessness. In the end, whether this whole timeline is right or wrong, decoding FNAF's labyrinth of lore has been the single most exciting and enjoyable challenge I've covered on this channel. Yeah, we've covered it. A lot. A bit more than I would have liked, quite honestly, but for good reason. Few games give their story this much thought, and even fewer games tell their stories in such a compelling, mysterious way. I've said this for a while now, but FNAF is the perfect modern game. It's cheap, if not free, so anyone can play it.
Mr.
The
Hippo.
mechanics are simple, it's fun to watch other people play it.
Like right damn it!
And it seeds in Easter eggs that get other people talking online. 4 years later, and still, only a handful of indie games and practically zero AAA games have followed in its footsteps, despite FNAF's massive success. And that, perhaps, is the single greatest and saddest mystery of them all. If this truly is the end, thanks God for an incredible ride and providing a game that has forever changed my life and this channel. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory.
We got
Thank you for watching every single one of these videos. Woo! Now that the FNAF mystery is solved, go out and solve my merch mystery. I'm not gonna be doing a theory on this one.
Here's why I stopped relying on last-minute deals for my travel plans. Don't book another trip and—
Shut up.
No. No. No, God, no! No! No, God, no! No! No!
He could have actually just sat in the couch instead of like... Doggo, you're playing Doki Doki Little Bit right now. Why? I will be streaming the game because it is a horror game.
Screw it. Let's talk about this thing. By all that's unholy, FNAF is somehow back. Someone got together their little summoning circle of Funko plushies and recycled Chuck E. Cheese pizza and awakened the sleeping behemoth that is Scott Cawthon, and now here we are with a new trailer for FNAF 7 and me
I'll help
in
wanted.
children's pajamas. So thank you, Internet. Also, can we just agree that this is creepy, right? Not me wearing kids' PJs, certainly, though. Come to think of it, that is really weird. No, the fact that I'm in a nightie that is dedicated to an animatronic that gets dead children stuffed into him.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of.
God, man. Merch in 2019. Yeah, indie games. Now, at the end of last summer, FNAF was basically done. The book series had concluded, FNAF 6 had burned the series to the ground, and Ultimate Custom Night ended the story by trapping William Afton in eternal torment. All that was really left was the movie. Just like Jeremy laid to rest on a nearby hillside,
just came out.
it was time for the series
I think
to
last year or
finally
this year, I
rest
can't
in
remember.
peace. But then, back in November, Scott hopped onto Steam to give all us Fredheads an update, and suddenly, the movie was the least certain thing of the group. A VR game? An AR game? More books? A third new game called Into Madness? Clearly, Scott intended me to be the protagonist of that one, since that's exactly where I'm headed to with so much new FNAF headed our way. Even a AAA game, where apparently instead of stuffing children into animatronics, they start getting stuffed into loot boxes. Fast forward 4 months to today.
No.
And here we are with the first new Scott Cawthon teaser in nearly a year. A teaser for one of the items on this massive list of animatronic horror sent to taunt me. But which one is it, and what it means for this new era of FNAFing is exactly what we're exploring today. So, let's get analyzing. First, let's just assess what we're seeing here, shall we? Clearly, you have 5 animatronics that are all melted together, which would be interesting enough on its own, but making it even more compelling is the fact that they all span the history of the franchise. You have Freddy, Foxy, and Bonnie, all in their FNAF 1 forms, but then you also have the pre-Mangle form of Funtime Foxy from Sister Location, and also pre-trapped Springtrap from, well, a lot of different cutscenes throughout the series, but most notably from the Fruity Maze minigame dating in FNAF 6. You can actually tell this based on the general shape of the nose, as well as the lack of decay and aging that you normally see post-Springlock failure. But since this is a Scott Cawthon teaser, you know that there's gonna be more here than just a cool image. If you throw this thing into Photoshop and start brightening it up, step 1 in any FNAF teaser analysis, you're gonna see the background has lines. Lines with some oddly inconsistent spacing. And of course, you have text. The quote is from Fazbear Entertainment in the upper right-hand corner, saying that everything is working as intended, but also a not quite so hidden bunch of text right here in the middle of the image that you really gotta squint to truly read.
Yeah, it's hard to
Don't
see.
listen to them. Blank, let something inside. It was an accident. Remember Jeremy. Jeremy?
Isn't it
That's the
funny?
guy from the gravestone. The night guard who has his name on the paycheck from FNAF 2. The supposed Bite of 87 victim. Ladies and gentlemen, sound the alarms. We are talking about the Loeb lad himself, which means that there is only one option here. We are in the same continuity. Cue the party horns and cheerful children sound effects. I know we were all eager to throw out our textbooks at the end of last semester, guys, but it's time to break out FNAF Lore for Dummies one final time.
I know.
Hey, I'm Matt,
dummy.
and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A maple pepper bacon sandwich is the mix of sweet and savory.
Whoopity-doo! Who's excited? This guy, I guess. Now, creating my own ARG over the last couple months has taught me a lot of things, specifically better ways to hide and code messages. And one particularly effective but simple way to do it is by opening image files as text files. So if we open this image file in Notepad, we actually get our answer to that first missing word. Don't listen to them. We let something inside. It was an accident. Remember Jeremy. So with all of that evidence compiled, let's start analyzing before we start digging deeper. Because there's a lot deeper to go, ladies and gentlemen. We are just scratching the surface. Now, the phrase "remember Jeremy" actually tells us a lot of things here. First, it tells us both the speaker of that line and the person it's directed to know who Jeremy is. Secondly, it tells us that the events of this game are happening in the aftermath of his death, which at this point is commonly accepted to be the result of the bite of 87. So from a timeline perspective, it looks like this quote is coming after 1987, meaning that we're after the string of murders in the FNAF 2 location and around the time of Michael Afton's revisit to the FNAF 1 building and his discovery of sister locations. In fact, knowing where in the timeline this quote must fall and seeing those lines in the background of the teaser, my mind immediately jumps to prison bars. Now, that seems like it might be a stretch. Clearly, these are just meant to be tiles, and while yes, that's probably what they are, the inconsistent spacing still felt weird to me, and it resembled the narrow strip of horizontal bars that many prison doors have. Now think back, way back, to when this story first started. Back to the secret newspapers from FNAF 1. The things that first told us that there was a deeper story to begin with. Quote, video surveillance identified the man responsible and led to his capture the following morning, end quote. And on the follow-up story, headline, 5 children now missing, suspect convicted. While the suspect has been charged, the bodies themselves were never found, end quote. So if these newspaper clippings are still considered canon, this former employee was convicted, meaning that they found him guilty, and as a result, most likely he went to prison for his crime. And we can be fairly confident that this isn't Afton, since his only comeuppance seems to have been the Springlock failure and the eventual eternal torment in HE double toothpicks, meaning that there is still a potential story to be told of someone there who's trapped in prison, wrongfully accused, haunted by the nightmarish amalgamation of animatronics that got him thrown into the slammer. At least, that's my wishful thinking for a potential plotline for one of these stories. Is it the story that we're getting in this game? Probably not, but a boy in Freddy pajamas can dream. Can't he? Let's go back to the text. Don't trust them. That them could be referring to the animatronics, or it could be referring to the members of Fazbear Entertainment, that quote in the upper corner saying that everything is working as intended. Now, as established by Ultimate Custom Night, the only haunted characters who still possess rational thought are Baby and the puppets.
The others are like animals, but I am very aware.
Which eliminates everyone that we currently see on screen here, thereby making it doubtful that the them in this quote is referring to the animatronics. Instead, this seems to be 2 employees of Fazbear Entertainment talking to each other, basically confirming not to trust what the bosses are saying. All the other lines here, we let something in, it was an accident, remember Jeremy, seem like those same co-workers realizing that something is wrong and that it relates to a mistake that they made, a mistake that's ultimately related to Jeremy's death, and now they're both worried about their own survival. Remember Jeremy seems to me to read more like, hey, remember that guy? We don't want to end up like him. So now, looking back across the games, what are some of the mistakes where something deadly has been let in? Well, you got Springtrap being let into Fazbear Fright in FNAF 3. You have basically the entirety of FNAF 6's salvage minigames, and Ennard from Sister Location. Ennard, who, funny enough, during the false ending to that game, repeatedly begs you to let him in.
You must help us. You must let us inside the room.
You have to let me inside the room. I know it was an accident.
And where in the series do we have 2 co-workers who wind up dead because they let something inside? Sister Location again. Now, it's a scene that's really easy to forget, but night 5 of Sister Location actually starts with Michael Afton crawling through the vents and suddenly coming across the hanged bodies of 2 former technicians. Co-workers, done in by the newly escaped pieces of Ennard. So we have something where the placement in the timeline makes sense, the relationship of the characters to Jeremy as co-workers makes sense, their skepticism of Fazbear Entertainment definitely makes sense, and you know what? That's not all. Their role specifically as technicians also makes sense with everything that we're learning about this new game. You see, Scott wasn't content to just give us 1 teaser. Oh no, he gave us 8 separate images teasing this new game, apparently to make up for lost time. Thanks, buddy. I mean, sure, we just analyzed the imagery and text of this one image, but if you check the source code of Scott's website, which at this point is FNAF Research Step 2, right after brightening up the images, you'll notice odd strings of text, all with this tag, content equals. Well, if you take those strings of letters and plug them into the URL bar, it reveals a trove of new findings. The first and most important of them, we're gonna be playing as a technician. Here, in this image, we can actually see Freddy's body opened up, ready to be worked on, which perfectly coincides with what Scott teased when he initially mentioned the possibility of this new VR game. Quote, if you liked repairing Funtime Freddy up close in Sister Location, just wait until you try to do something like that in VR, up close and personal, with these huge animatronics that are just one mistake away from jumping at you. Another of these images, the one of Bonnie without the eye, also is teasing at this idea of no longer being a guard, but rather an animatronic tech having to repair all of these robots. So could the main story of this new FNAF game actually be the story of these two hapless technicians who end their lives in an underground robotics bunker? If the quote on this teaser is to be believed, the answer seems to be a solid yes. If it is, it even relates back to the title of the game. You see, going back to look at the source code yet again, you see that the original teaser image is listed as hw.jpg. Now, back in February, my buddy Dawko tweeted out that a new FNAF game had gotten leaked on the ESRB ratings website. The ESRB, man, get your act together. First you leaked the Super Smash Bros. 4 roster, and now you're leaking the new FNAF game? It is time to stop. It's time to stop, okay?
Oh, I don't think Matt
And yes,
that.
this is someone else's meme, but I thought it was appropriate for the situation. Plus, I'm in pajamas, thought it would be funny. There it is. Filthy Frank, we miss you. But in all seriousness, this game's title is Five Nights at Freddy's VR Help Wanted. HW, just like the name of the teaser image. The description for this leaked game even confirms that you will be playing as a technician. Quote, once again, players assume the role of a repair person tasked with monitoring and repairing animatronic characters at a pizzeria. From a first-person perspective, players explore dark hallways, complete puzzles, and try to avoid menacing, malfunctioning animatronic figures. The game contains frequent screams and jump scares with the words, "You are dead," appearing on screen after players are attacked, end quote. And what happens when you lose two technicians to sudden animatronic-related fatalities? Time to find some more. Throw up the sign, help wanted. So we have ourselves a VR game starring a technician who's repairing animatronics, slowly coming to realize that they've made a terrible career decision. Or do we? Looking across all the other teaser images, it feels like this whole game may actually be disconnected. We see scenes from all the various settings we visited in this franchise. The tile floor behind that old model of Bonnie suggests that it's the FNAF 1 location. This shot of Springtrap looming in the background tells us that we're gonna be visiting Fazbear Fright. The appearance of Funtime Foxy in the teaser suggests that we'll be visiting Sister Location for some challenges. Heck, we're even gonna be invading the crying child's bedroom from FNAF 4 based on this shot of Baby. Notice the iconic closets from that game, as well as the bedspread design in the background. So, is this game just gonna be a bunch of vignettes? A compilation of the series' greatest scares, only now they're in VR?
No.
I don't think so. I do think that this game can and will tell its own unique story that builds out the lore of this franchise, and one of these teaser images solidifies that for me. True to form, Scott hit his biggest reveal the deepest. You see, going on to Scott Games one final time, and it's a lot of times to visit Scott Games just for one teaser image, something seems a little off if you're paying close enough attention. You see, the meta label for the website is actually misspelled with a 0 in between the two T's. And if you go through the source code with a really fine tooth comb and a really keen eye, you'll actually notice a couple more typos. An R in content, a big old G in block quote, and an N in the word text. 0RGN. Type those letters into the URL bar and you get this. Now, clearly it's been obscured very heavily, but if you blur it and affect the contrast a little bit, change some of the levels, you actually get something that looks more like this. Something that doesn't just look like an animatronic, but one animatronic in particular. Notice the half-closed eye. It's Ennard. It's Ennard's
Yeah.
signature appearance. Half-closed eye, horizontal tube-like lips, an endoskeleton looking to be let in. So, there you have it. We have ourselves a new VR game telling us the story of two technicians who made a fatal career decision. Based on the fact that the game already has a rating, I'm assuming that we're gonna probably see this one coming out pretty soon. It's weird, actually, to think about a FNAF game coming out on something like PlayStation 4, the PlayStation VR. I'm excited to see it. Will I be right in my predictions? Well, we're just gonna have to wait and see. And by wait, I mean it's probably out already now. As soon as I hit publish, it probably came out, because, you know, that's how Scott goes, right? Is it out? Is it out yet? How about now? Right now. It's there. Nothing? All right, screw it. I'm gonna go get out of these pajamas.
What was in the video?
But hey, did you notice the new theoryware? We call it Chaos Theory. It's a name that I have a lot of fun with, and it's available right now on the merch site. Link is down below in the description, but hold on, while you're down there, you can actually win yourself $100 in
I'll do another one. Maybe two.
We cover a lot of scary stuff on this show, but today is, no clickbait, the scariest topic of all. Copyright. With a little dose of FNAF, all my favorite topics in one episode. I love 2019! Today, call me Gloria Bolgia, because our top story is an oopsie. One big oopsie made by one big man. Actually, I don't know what his relative size is. He's just big in the gaming space. And that man's name is Scott Cawthon. Now, if you're not familiar with what happened, let me catch you up. Last episode, we analyzed a teaser image for Scott's new VR game, FNAF Help Wanted. What I didn't mention in that video, though, was that it was only online for just a couple of hours. In fact, by the time I had gotten to check out this thing, it had been wiped clean from the internet, only preserved thanks to some dedicated Redditors, specifically GB Oro Recharged. Now, Scott is no stranger to posting things only to rip them off the internet later. He's done it with comments on my videos, he did it with version 1 of FNAF World, his contents of the infamous FNAF 4 box, yep, those got changed. Heck, even the script for his new movie was written, approved, and ready to shoot, and then he just threw it out. It's like, this community deserves better. But this time, it was different. This time, it was because the team working on the VR game, Steel Wool, had unintentionally used fan art. As he said on Reddit, quote, "My first teaser in more than half a year was made using questionable choices at best and traced fan models at worst." He then went on 2 days later to clarify further, quote again, "As you all remember, the artwork that I teased for the game, which was actually a portion of the cover artwork, included characters that had used fan art and fan models as references. When I learned about that, I was obviously pretty upset and took down the teaser. The person working on the artwork used images that he thought were mine. If anything, everyone who had one of their models referenced should pat themselves on the back, because your models look like they were canon. I think it's a testament to the fan community that the fan models rival mine. Many of them looked identical, and some of them look better." So the TLDR of this whole thing is that he pulled down the teaser because it used recolored, reskinned models made by a fan of characters that Scott Cawthon himself created that looked so close to the original creations that his own team couldn't tell him apart from the originals. And this sparked a really interesting question in my head. Did Scott legally have to do this? These are his characters, after all, and the fan-made models were so close that they probably wouldn't have been seen as any sort of transformative use. Now, obviously, he cares about this community a lot, and pulling the teaser was absolutely the correct decision from a goodwill standpoint, but what would the law say about this? After doing the research, it's a lot more complicated and interesting than you might think. To get there, we're going on a twisted copyright journey that'll show us why Naughty Dog lives up to its name, why your photographs of the Eiffel Tower are probably illegal, and why everyone's in an uproar about Rule 34. Oh boy, welcome online. Copyright law doesn't know what's hitting it.
Crazy.
That's a terrible last line. Whoo boy, copyright law doesn't know what's hitting it. Copyright law don't have an indicator. Just gonna segue over to the next paragraph. Oh, and before we dive into this episode, you might have noticed that I actually released another video alongside this one today. In that upload, I specifically talk about this channel and a lot of our own personal issues that we've had with fan art in the past, as well as a way to protect yourself if you're a fan artist who's working online right now. It's actually a really important video for me, touching on a topic that I've stayed really quiet about for quite a long time. So before you go down into the comments and start laying into me for not being allowed to cover this issue because I supposedly stole fan art in the past, please go watch that video too. That's actually why it's a dual upload. I couldn't really decide which one made more sense to go first, because really the two complement each other. They comment off of each other. So just please watch both. It'll do me a favor. It'll save me a lot of grief when I read the comments in this. Save my self-esteem a lot of grief as well. Oh, the other disclaimer that I should mention at the beginning of this episode is that there's a lot of fan work out there that is transformative, that is not considered to be a copy of anyone else's work. This episode actually isn't about that. Today, we are purely focused on fan art that's intended to closely represent a character that already exists and all the basic legal mumbo-jumbo that's around that. So, we all on the same page? We all good? Great! Let's get into it. Blue Skidoo, we can do. Now, Scott is far from the only game maker that's had a copyright oopsie when it comes to teasing a new game. Case in point, the original version of the trailer for Uncharted 4: A Thief's End was released containing a painting that took images from Assassin's Creed Black Flag's concept art. The one with the pirate. I gotta give credit where credit's due here, guys. That is incredibly on brand. Stealing artwork to promote a game that has the word thief in the title, very smart, very meta. Ubisoft wasn't appreciating that level of meta commentary though, and Sony was quick to pull the video and replace the asset. Oopsies like this also aren't just limited to marketing materials and teasers either. Back in 2013, a graphic designer named Cameron Booth made a post announcing that he was effing furious with the fact that the game The Last of Us featured a map that he had made of the Boston Metro. First off, I'd like to point out that The Last of Us, just like Uncharted, is a Naughty Dog game. I guess we know what the naughty is referring to in their name. But after what I assume was a swift apology and a fairly decent payoff, Cameron quickly dialed back his language in a later public post saying, "It seems as if matters will be resolved to everyone's satisfaction shortly." Great, I'm so happy for you guys. Money truly heals all wounds. But this case already starts to reveal some weird nuances of the copyright world, because while the graphic designer who made the picture owns the copyright to his map and was absolutely in his right to complain about the improper usage, he actually doesn't have the copyright to the Boston Metro itself. Does that sound dumb? You bet it does. In fact, it is so dumb that it can't be anything other than real. Real-world pieces of architecture are subject to their own copyright. Just like one musician can't copy the song of another musician, so too an architect can't copy the building design created by another architect. Things get even weirder though when you start thinking about what this means for pictures that people are taking in front of buildings. Those pictures technically are violating copyright, or at least they would be if it wasn't for this idea of freedom of panorama. You see, most countries have some law or general understanding in place that says you won't get sued if you decide to create an Instagram story showing yourself posing in front of some famous landmarks. Notice though that I said most countries. Most does not equal all. Case in point, France. France doesn't have freedom of panorama. As a result, technically speaking, you legally shouldn't be able to post photographs of the Eiffel Tower, but only the night photographs. You see, because the Eiffel Tower without lights was built in 1889, that one is old enough to have entered the public domain. But the lights that go on at night were installed in 1985, thereby making this an artistic work with live copyright, making posting photos of it illegal. That means that anything you find in a regular Google image search under Eiffel Tower at night was probably taken by fearless outlaws who are flouting the law, throwing caution to the wind, and posting their tourist photos of the Eiffel Tower in the evening. Probably a bunch of developers at Naughty Dog being like, whatever, we don't care. We steal artwork all the time. We're Naughty Dog. We're dogs who are naughty. So what does the Eiffel Tower have to do with FNAF fan art? Well, obviously, people are taking photos of the Eiffel Tower and art getting thrown in les prisons. I actually didn't learn the word for prison when I took French. And that's because these crazy laws don't matter for people who are only using the image for personal consumption. You put an image on your fridge or you slap it on the desk at your office, you're fine. But the second you publish that image, it becomes a different story. Just take a look at any stock image website like Getty Images, which is a business built on legally owning the rights to every image in their archive, and you'll notice that most of the images of the Eiffel Tower, even the ones with low light, don't feature the lights on the building turned on. And this is where things get tricky. As if they weren't overly complicated enough. You see, if you publish a piece of artwork that features a character like Mangle or Mario or Mewtwo or heck Elsa, and you don't own the copyright to that character, then publishing that fan work is technically a copyright violation, which merits a huge question: what counts as publishing? Now, obviously, publishing includes things like putting it in a book that ends up in Barnes & Noble, but publishing actually has a much broader definition in the legal sense. Publishing, in the broadest sense of the word, just means causing something to become public or making it publicly known. That means that everything from printing up and handing out a bunch of flyers on the street to, you guessed it, posting it online is covered. It doesn't even matter if it's a non-commercial type of posting. Posting fan art non-commercially on your blog or a site like Tumblr or Instagram or Twitter all count as publishing that image. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, that affects a lot of people, yeah, it does. You're absolutely right. Technically speaking, every fan artist on Tumblr and DeviantArt and Pinterest and Pixiv and their own independent blog, they are technically violating copyright every time they post a new sketch of an existing character that's not transformative enough to be considered fair use. I know that sounds unbelievable, and that every fan artist out there is lighting their torch and rummaging for their proverbial pitchfork to come after me right now. But first off, don't kill the messenger here, guys. Legally, this is the truth based on the lawyers that I've spoken with and the legal papers that we've read. That is the letter of the law. But the letter is obviously only half the story, considering, of course, that the prisons across the country aren't filled with Rainbow Dash fan artists and bendy bottlers. Though it'd be pretty funny if they were. What are you in for? Killed a guy. You? I drew a pink pony very accurately. In actual practice, the situation favors fan artists a lot more than you might first think. As you can see pretty much everywhere on the internet, it's really rare for copyright holders to try and enforce their copyright. The only instances where you see this actually happen tend to be when a brand feels that the art that's being made really misrepresents their IP. One really convenient example of this in the gaming world is Blizzard, who issued DMCA takedowns across a bunch of different fan art in efforts to stop people from making how do I put this nicely? Renditions of Overwatch characters in compromising situations, loving each other just a bit too much for their liking. For those of you who have the foreign tongue, images of their characters in flagrante delicto, in the carnal
embrace tranquility.
Basically, Blizzard wanted people to skip from Rule 33 to Rule 35 of the Internet Handbook, if you catch my drift. And you can imagine just how effective Blizzard was at accomplishing that goal. Not that I would know personally, I was just doing research. For a friend. Anyway, according to the guidelines from Blizzard's policy on fan-made creations, they cracked down in order to, quote, maintain and protect the image of their games. They also said, Blizzard requires that productions maintain the T rating that has been given to its products by the ESRB. And I get that, right? It makes sense. While it might have been kind of a futile effort to remove sexy time from the internet, legally speaking, they're entirely within their legal right to protect their brand. But speaking of legal rights, it is a two-way street. Even though a company owns the rights to its characters, you, as the fan artist, own the right to your individual piece of fan art. So going all the way back to our example of FNAF fan art, which there's a lot out there, if you drew a picture of Freddy and the cupcake, what are the actual rights for that image? Well, Scott owns the copyright to the character, but you own the copyright to that specific image. So you can't publish it, you don't own the rights to the character, but Scott also can't publish that image because he doesn't have the rights to your artwork. You are both caught. As it turns out, no one really has the rights to publish that image. Unless, of course, you both agree to it, but good luck there. Scott doesn't talk to anyone. Except for Dawko. Probably his secret son, I don't know. He talks to Dawko like all the time. Now, what would have happened if Scott hadn't owned up to his oopsie and this situation had actually escalated? What could the fan artist who created those character models have done to him? Turns out, a very similar issue has come up and was settled in a fairly famous case with the iconic Obama Hope image from that election. The artist of the famous Obama image, Shepard Fairey, who is actually one of my favorite street artists, created the artwork, but he copied the image from a photograph of Obama that he, quote, found on the internet. But it was owned by an independent photographer from the Associated Press. In court, the ruling was that the Hope artwork infringed on the copyright of the original photograph. The original owner of the photograph now participates in all money that's earned by the rights to that image. This is also the one case where I'll actually mention fair use, because Shepard Fairey actually tried to make the argument that his work here was transformative, but the court didn't buy it. In fact, he almost went to jail for it. The upshot of this whole thing is that, in theory, if a legal fight like this one would have happened in Scott's case, it could have very easily landed both parties in court, and it would have actually been pretty hard for Scott to win. Luckily, none of that happened. And I think a lot of that is because Scott holds himself to a higher standard and wouldn't have wanted to do a disservice to his fans. As he said in his apology, quote, "The only thing I care about is doing right by this community." Good on you, man. But there is another compelling reason for Scott to take that teaser down. Money. You see, the other big complicating factor in all of this isn't whether someone is really infringing on their copyright,
by the way,
but
the
whether
reason why I
they're
haven't been
actually
talking is
making
because
money while doing
one
the
of my
infringing.
friends
In the United
called me, I don't-
States,
would you
criminal
guys look at
copyright
that?
laws prohibit you from actually using someone else's intellectual property for your own financial gain. This means that when you post your fan art online, you're not going to face any criminal liability. Fan artists, you are good to go. Sketchy nerd t-shirt companies that are selling unlicensed Nintendo merch, though, you might not be so safe.
Stop! You violated the law. Pay the court a fine or serve your sentence.
Likewise, if you're selling your own posters of your fan art images, well, that could land you in some legal hot water as well. And I know that this is the most sensitive subject around fan art because of all the commission that artists earn by doing fan art made to order for other members of their fan communities. I'm not condemning anyone. I'm not passing any sort of judgment on anyone else's online business. As someone who uses a lot of online images of other people's IP, I'm kind of digging my own grave here as well. This whole topic just makes me uncomfortable, especially since that's still not the end of this whole story. There's still only a select couple of ways that you could actually be sued, even if you did commercialize your fan art. The company would need to show in court that your art had damaged their company in some way, using the naughty Overwatch picture example again, if I can. If Blizzard took the fan artists to court, they would need to prove that somehow this adult-only content had damaged their brand in some way. In their case, Blizzard is trying to market their game Overwatch as a family-friendly experience for all players ages 13 and over. And so the brand may actually get hurt if the first thing that comes up when mom starts Googling Orisa is a bunch of this. Very family unfriendly images. How much, though? It's actually hard to tell. While it seems like they would actually have a good case, it's still really hard to quantify how much their brand would get hurt by stuff like this. which is blurry behind me. For your safety, I swear.
Your safety is my primary concern.
And that's a pretty clear-cut case here. In most instances, fan art doesn't compete with the official images from...
Doggy, you know, I'm thinking about it. How does this go from FNAF to we've been talking about Overwatch for the past 17 minutes now? not FNAF, Overwatch. Doesn't make any sense.
The game. So what does all of this mean for you, the fan artist? Well, it means that you probably don't have to worry about getting sued. And even if you are getting close to getting sued, you're probably gonna know that you're doing something wrong long before anything happens. Like in 2015, the Pokemon Company went after a cafe that ran a Pokemon party unofficially at PAX that promoted itself using Pikachu posters and charged an entry fee. Or, in another case, a woman was threatened with legal action from 20th Century Fox because she was selling a Firefly-themed hat on her Etsy store. So, long story short, just don't charge admission to your next Pokemon-themed birthday party and leave the fire... It's back. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that clearly doesn't understand the meaning of the word final. It's finally over. That is the end. Last FNAF lore theory, FNAF is at its end. The end. Final FNAF theory. But can you really blame me? These games have confirmed endings in FNAFs 3, 4, 6, and Ultimate Custom Night. It's like Doctor Strange saw 14 million different endings and Scott Cawthon was like, I'll take them all! Beginning to think FNAF World's inclusion of FNAF 57 Freddy in Space was less of a joke and more of a preview of coming attractions. So anyway, it's back. Call it whatever you like. FNAF 7, FNAF VR, Help Wanted, MatPat Insanity Simulator. But after a year of detoxing, Five Nights at Freddy's is back with a new official game in the series, and it's more so than any other installment. Feels like an inflection point. A game that is simultaneously looking back to pay tribute to where these games began, as well as a game that's looking forward to lay the groundwork for where this franchise is headed. This isn't just some quick VR cash grab for the series, this is a pivotal game in the the canon that closes the book on the old lore and also launches us into FNAF: The Next Generation. It seems to answer some old mysteries from the previous games, all while opening up the themes and tone for what's to come. And there is a lot to unpack here. This is, without question, the meatiest game in the FNAF library, which is impressive because it's still a VR title. So let's not waste any time and get started with the basics. Now, in case you don't have a VR headset, I've actually played through the entire game on GT Live, so you can check out all the highlights.
No! No! Oh! Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Did we do it?
And lowlights of my playthrough over there.
Hello, boys and girls. I'm here to give you your happiest day ever. Come with me, wayward souls. We've got vengeance to strike.
But let me quickly take you through what you need to know for today's theory. In Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, we're playing as a beta tester for a new Freddy game. As we're told in the opening cinematic,
we know that Fazbear Entertainment has developed something of a bad reputation over the last few decades. While it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic.
And yes, that picture is really Scott Cawthon canonically inserting himself into this game. That is a discussion for another episode, my friends, because it throws all sorts of weird monkey wrenches into the lore, but we'll get to that later. So according to the intro, Scott's Games gave Fazbear Entertainment a bad name, and the point of this Freddy Fazbear virtual experience then is to poke fun of their past, clear their name, and ultimately rebuild the brand. Seems simple enough, right? Play through some loving recreations of past games as well as some new minigames, and that's it. Job complete. A new generation of Faz fans fall in love with all these new characters and add to Scott Cawthon's growing pile of money.
Don't forget the merch, perfect for birthdays.
Speaking of merch, Fazbear Entertainment ain't the only ones shilling for their
Doggo,
supper.
I'm only
Game
watching
Theory
like
merch is also perfect
I don't know.
for
Yesterday I
birthdays.
watched
Heck,
15.
probably even
Today
more
I'm gonna
perfect
watch
for
on
birthdays,
14 or
Scott.
15.
And wouldn't you know it, we just released a bunch of new items for you. Can't sleep at night because you got some creepy animatronic hanging
if I'm
out
watching
in your
this
closet?
many a day
We've
as
got you
100
covered.
episodes, it's gonna take me,
Color-changing Game Theory
I think,
light.
more than
It's the
5
perfect way to
days.
keep
So I have to do
animatronics
this
at
until,
bay
like, next
because
week, too.
it's powered by USB.
Possibly.
You don't even have to worry about your batteries running out at 5:55 a.m. Or maybe you're just looking to be the best dressed at your friend's next pizza party. Stay fashionable while making sure to stay out of the employees only room in your new His and Hers Game Theory shirt. A purple Theorist Pride t-shirt for the ladies with reinforced sleeves and neck, and the Codebreaker shirt for the guys. Asymmetric because I think it's really fashionable in clothing, but also with Easter eggs Benedict built into the design of the shirt. It's a shirt and a puzzle for you to solve all in one. We've also got socks,
It's not a
guys
puzzle
and girls
anymore,
underwear, a
just
jacket,
said
and
it
only
anyways.
a limited amount of
I'm actually
everything
listening to
available.
him instead
So
of like
once our efforts to really do something better here on YouTube. So with that being said, show off to the world that you actually understand the lore of these games, or pretend like
I'll
you
probably
understand the
watch,
lore of these
like,
games by nabbing yourself some new theory where link is right
either
up here or it's on the
this
top
last
line
one
of
or
the
the next
description. Now with that out of the way, back to VR. Playing through the game, it is legitimately impressive. Pretty much everyone here is recreated in a stunning 3D environment. Bonnie, Baby, Funtime Freddy the Puppet, heck, even Easter egg appearances by Mini Renas and Lolbit. Characters that most of you watching this probably haven't even heard of before because you have much better things to do with your brain space than I do. Practically everyone is here in this game, except for one important omission. Golden Freddy. I mean, Laura isn't around either, but you know, I said important. But that seems weird, right? I mean, this is a game that drops you into perfect recreations of the first 3 installments of the series. You don't just forget about one of the most important characters to the lore of these games. Well, that's because it isn't some careless oversight. Golden Freddy isn't here for a reason. It's our first clue that this game isn't just a joke and is a canonical entry. Specifically, it tells us where it falls in line with everything else that we've played through. Golden Freddy isn't here because she's busy hanging out in HE double Chica arms with William Afton. Think back to the end of Ultimate Custom Night and our previous theories. By tracking the voice lines used throughout the game over screens, we were able to piece together that we're playing as William Afton in that game. Child killer extraordinaire, and that the whole game was him trapped in heck to atone for his sins. And the thing that was keeping him there was the one he should not have killed, a girl named Cassidy. The spirit who had an axe to grind, possessing the Golden Freddy suit. The reason Golden Freddy isn't in FNAF VR is because the spirit is down from there tormenting Willie A forever, from here until the end of the series. That's why the ultimate ending of Custom Night was Golden Freddy twitching off into the darkness. Cassidy never gives up her soul, no matter what Old Man Consequences said. Further cementing that Help Wanted is now at the end of the FNAF timeline is this miserable little creature right here, the Scrap Baby plush. Because why wouldn't you want to cuddle with something that rips in half and eats children alive? Let me remind everyone who doesn't have an encyclopedic index of all 60 plus animatronics that have graced the screen in this franchise that Scrap Baby is the homeless hobo version of the old baby after escaping sister location and who was voted out of the Ennard tribe sometime between FNAF 5 and 6. Her only on-screen appearance is in FNAF 6, so the fact that a reference to her exists in this game at all means that it must come after her expulsion from Ennard, sometime definitely after FNAF 5, but again, with Golden Freddy missing, it seems to secure it after everything's burned down and closed. So we have ourselves a company that's trying to rebuild its reputation after a series of tragic events. Seems pretty simple, right? Of course not. This is a FNAF game. You know that the story is never going to be that obvious. Hidden throughout the game are cassette tapes that, when collected, unleash a new monster into the hallways of this pizzeria, what the game's files refer to as Glitch Trap, a yellow bunny with purple eyes. Yellow bunny with purple eyes, you say? I think I might know where this is headed. As you collect more and more tapes, this glitch rabbit comes closer and closer, becoming more and more fully formed. Beat all the minigames and you unlock the final challenge, Pizza Party, a nightmarish fever dream that mashes together every location that you just played through. Waiting for you at the end of this horrific maze is the single scariest moment from the entire franchise, and I can't emphasize that enough. It is literally chilling. What you learn is that you, a 7-year-old, have been lured to the back room of Freddy's, and what awaits you is your pizza party, complete with your favorite flavor of cake, all your best animatronic friends, and then Glitch Trap calls you to follow him. The music fades, and suddenly you're on stage. You're holding Freddy's microphone. You are Freddy. You've been stuffed. You are now a missing child, watching as your killer dances gleefully to the song that you're being forced to stand up on stage and sing. This isn't just a spoopy jump scare of some goofy character. This is real horror. So it definitely seems like this new character, Pedo Hair over here, is William Afton. I mean, sure, the suit isn't as bulky as a Springlock suit, but he's got all the other qualifications down. Yellow bunny fursona, check. Association with the color purple, check. Enjoys children's pizza parties just a wee bit too much? Big old check again. Then again, to call this character William would be missing a huge chunk of this game's story. This isn't William. Like I said, he's trapped in eternal torment with Cassidy, listening to Barney the Hippo over here tell his life story.
Dry bread was always fresh on Tuesday. They made sourdough bread on Monday and threw it out Wednesday. What was I saying?
No, to understand who, or
one
better
of his
put,
best
what
stories right there.
this thing actually is, we need to examine the tapes that summon Glitch Trap here in the first place. Scattered throughout the various minigames are 16 glitching cassettes left behind by a former game dev, Tape Girl, which, when put together, tell the story of a failing game company, a bit of malicious code, and some very stabby office supplies. We're also introduced to the story of another beta tester who was in our position before us, named Jeremy, making this the third time that the name Jeremy has appeared in these games, with the first being FNAF 2's Night Guard, and then again on the gravestones in FNAF 6. Coincidence? I think not. The first tape immediately makes it clear we're not picking these up in chronological order.
There are more. They may not be in order.
Which leaves us the task of shuffling them into some modicum of sense in order to put the story together of what really happened while this game, the game we're supposedly playing now in its final form, was in development. Going through the tapes, I've done the shuffling for you, and I think I've come up with the most cohesive narrative based on the evidence and what Tape Girl actually says. She begins by telling us that the game's then playtester Jeremy has been complaining to his manager Dale about nightmares. Except he's not explaining them like they're nightmares, he's talking about them like they're real.
He wasn't talking about it like someone telling a friend about his dreams, though. He was pale. He doesn't even jump anymore. He just stands there like he's talking to someone.
Pale? Doesn't react to scares? Talking to themselves? Sounds to me like he's going crazy. Either that or he's just a FNAF YouTuber. Hashtag relatable, am I right? The game he's working on is this one, Freddy Fazbear's Virtual Experience, which includes some code that was inherited from Fazbear Entertainment. Scanned off some old hard drives to save him time and money.
It was just junk. Circuit boards and things like that. It seemed to take hold by itself. But then, he started appearing. At least that's what Jeremy said.
Manager Dale doesn't seem to take Jeremy's warning seriously, however, and instead he starts documenting all of Jeremy's behavior in preparation to fire him.
You can always tell when a company is getting ready to fire someone. The thing about it is that I don't think they were going to fire him because of anything he was doing wrong. They just knew he'd seen something.
This confirms for us one major detail, that the scariest thing in the FNAF universe is crunch time. Working long hours until you're driven crazy and then fired at the end? Man, it's just like the real-life games industry. It's uncanny. These games just get more and more realistic. So Jeremy is going crazy and no one is listening. Flash forward to tape 6, where Tape Girl talks about coming in early one morning to see the supply room lit and Jeremy in the darkened testing room. It's a short tape, but it's an important one because it sets us up for tape number 9, when we learn that what she saw looked like a Halloween mask laying on the ground and a bunch of ink both on Jeremy and scattered around the floor. But that's not ink, and that's no mask. The ink is Jeremy's blood, and the mask is actually Jeremy's face, which he presumably sliced off his own body using the aptly named guillotine paper cutter. We know this to be true thanks to tape number 4, where we hear Tape Girl say that the cutter comes from the supply room and that Jeremy expressly knew where it was.
I didn't even know we had one in the supply room. I was always afraid of losing a finger. That seems so silly now. Jeremy used to do design work. I guess that's how he knew it was there.
And for as extreme as this sounds, we know that he sliced off his
How
face
do you
due
even
to all
do that
these
with
seemingly
one of those?
minute details about how his face was obscured that morning.
I went back and peered in the window. I couldn't see his face. He had the visor covering his head.
Anyone else getting some bizarre Bite of 87 vibes from this story? No? Is it just me? Huh. So Jeremy eventually dies from his injuries. After Jeremy's death, things start getting even weirder, which is a relative statement considering that this is the FNAF franchise we're talking about. Tape Girl overhears a conversation about a lawsuit in the aftermath of Jeremy's death, which makes perfect sense given that he died a horrific death on the job. In response, the company starts taking some serious steps to cover their tracks, namely to sell off the game and destroy evidence that could incriminate him. In the meantime, Tape Girl takes over Jeremy's role as playtester, and all we can hope is that she really cleaned that VR headset before she put that thing back on. She has 3 days to playtest the game. Across her audio logs, we learn that in that time, she sees Glitch Trap for the first time and comes to learn that he's attached itself to her audio logs. She tries to delete them, but can't. So instead of deleting them, she fragments and disperses them into the 16 small pieces we've been collecting throughout our playthrough, warning us that they shouldn't be reunited at any cost.
Hide all traces of these logs that I've created. I fear that finding them and reassembling them will also reassemble the very thing I've tried so desperately to destroy.
Whoops! Probably shouldn't have hidden that info on tape 15 of 16. After that, though, she seems to backtrack on her story, saying that in fact the entity in the game can be killed, and that to do so we should reassemble the tapes. Odd, but okay, we've got them all anyway, so might as well see what we can do. Glitch Trap attacks us once we have 16 tapes, and if we don't respond in time, we trade places with him. For a brief second, we see through his eyes back down at the console that we were just operating. Our consciousness has truly melded with his, just like the voiceover warned about at the top of the game.
Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference.
So that's a bad ending. But if we do manage to properly follow Tape Girl's instructions as he's trying to mind meld with us, well, he still seems like he escapes. Or at the very least, he definitely doesn't die. This should have been like some Mr. Smith in the Matrix moment where all his code disintegrates or something. But instead, we're trapped on one side of a door in the game. A bloody, hand-printed door with scratch marks clearly showing people stuck in here desperately trying to escape. And we see Glitch Trap practically skipping off into the darkness. This doesn't seem like the ending we should be getting for putting all the pieces of the tape together and following all the tape maker's instructions. That would basically mean that FNAF VR has 3 losing scenarios here: getting stuffed at the end of the pizza party, transferring consciousness on the home screen, and getting locked behind the door if you choose to follow Tape Girl's instructions. That can't be right, can it? Well, maybe it is. Maybe that's the point of the game. Maybe we are destined to lose no matter what we do here. I mean, think about it. The canon ending of Sister Location was a bad ending, with Michael getting scooped. The canon ending of FNAF 4 was a bad ending, with the crying child getting bitten. In FNAF 6, you and literally everyone else burned to death. I mean, it's considered a victory, but you're still dead. Now, let's look closer at the text of the audio logs. There is something clearly wrong in them. The tapes start out just fine. They follow her story in a pretty logical way, and we know she's a real person in the real world because she's observing things from outside the game's testing room. Things like Jeremy complaining to management and the stuff that's present in the supply room. But then, upon closer inspection, you start noticing some strange anomalies. For instance, we have two tapes that both start with her introducing who she is. A hi or a hello followed by, "You don't know me," or "Can you hear me?" which is our first hint that something's a bit off. The same person is making these tapes the whole time for the same audience. So why introduce herself to us twice in both tape 1 and tape 15? Why would one end with her saying,
"Now I fear that those logs are being used as a Trojan horse. If you're unable to abandon development, hide all traces of these logs that I've created."
Basically telling us to hide the logs, but then also say this.
There are more. They may not be in order.
Basically inviting us to put them all together. Weirder still is the fact that the last file suddenly does this major about face relative to all the previous logs, where suddenly she says out of nowhere, "Oh yeah, there is a way to kill Glitchtrap." This is odd on a lot of different levels. The first and most obvious being, if these instructions really do work and she's so sure about it, why didn't she follow them? If this method was actually effective and she knew it was effective, Glitchtrap wouldn't be in the game anymore because she would have followed her own advice and wiped him out. How would she even know that this system works? The answer is, it clearly doesn't. Or at least it doesn't do what she says it's gonna do. That's because she's not trying to get you to kill off the entity in the code, she's trying to get you to release it. While we don't have every piece of the puzzle in this story, here's what I think actually happened with all these audio tapes. The tape maker starts out genuinely making these logs to document the weird stuff that's happening in the game studio. The stuff with Jeremy really happens. She really sees Glitchtrap in the game, but on her last day of playtesting, she tries to delete the files and fails. Instead of killing Glitchtrap, she undergoes a digital consciousness transfer, just like we do in one of the 3 bad endings, trapping her in the game and releasing Glitchtrap, presumably into her own body, or just releasing him into the real world. Both of which are possibilities that the game explicitly warns us about in the opening sequence.
Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters.
That, my friends, is why you always have to read the disclaimer. From inside the game, she's now stuck, with her only hope for escape being to go through the same process she just went through from the other side. She creates a new log, starting over by saying,
"Hello? Can you hear me?"
Which in reality is saying, "Hello, can you hear me in here?" Since she's now making the log from inside the game. She tries to create a new story that encourages a future developer to piece the logs back together, and then seeds one final log out there to tease the idea that a future developer can solve the problem by killing off Glitchtrap using her log assembly method. It's smartly constructed because she's counting on future developers having the same curiosity and determination she did. She even mentions this in one of her earlier logs, tape 3, that when Jeremy had told the developers that something was wrong,
but as a dev team, we all just saw it as a challenge to find what the problem was and fix it.
We do exactly the same thing, finding what's wrong and following the instructions on how to fix it, only to find ourselves on the wrong side of the door covered in handprints, where presumably lots of other people have been there before us. Glitchtrap, or whoever is in the body of Glitchtrap at this point, perhaps Tape Girl herself, disappears into the darkness and takes over our body on the outside. And now it's our turn to wait for the next beta tester to come in, follow the tapes, and hand over their consciousness to us. Now, that last bit there is speculation based on the oddities in the audio logs and the fact that following her instructions results in seemingly yet another bad ending. But even if all of that about consciousness switching and her being trapped in the game and us taking her place trapped in the game isn't the case, the point is, William's back, just not in a way that any of us expected. What seems undeniable in Help Wanted's story is the fact that his consciousness was preserved in the circuit boards that got scanned to make this game. And now, he's here as Glitchtrap, tricking players into letting him escape. It's no longer the same guy. He's now an AI replicating the behaviors of William and snatching the body of whatever completionist is determined enough to play through all the elements of the game. In a funny way, it's exactly like the story we've been piecing together for Petscop.
Be cool.
Odd, actually. Maybe they really are one and the same. both made by Scott Cawthon. The biggest lingering question now in my mind, though, how many Williams are out there? Is this just one instance of an AI looking to escape, and now we're the new host body? Or is it somehow able to replicate itself, copying and pasting its code into any mind out there that's playing its little game? Could we be entering a new part of the FNAF franchise with multiple William Aftons, all in completely different bodies? For as cool as that would be, and honestly I think this game could open up that world, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that's why there's such an emphasis in this game on you being a beta tester. It's one instance of corrupted code and you happen to be playing it. And now you're infected by it. In the next generation of FNAF, you, or at least your body with William Afton's code in your head, is the new killer. And so on and so forth until we finally get to FNAF in space. But hey, that's just a theory. A game
He's not making FNAF in space.
And we should probably talk about Jeremy. It's weird that his name is used 3 times. There is no possible way that that's meant to be a coincidence. There's also this random appearance of Shadow Freddy, which I found in my playthrough, which again, seems like an odd little detail that's important to account for in the Pizza Party minigame. And the fact that Glitch Trap has 3 toes, just like the footprints that are outside of FNAF 6's house window. There is a lot more here in this game, but I honestly just need more time to think it all through. Rest assured though, I'll be back.
I always come back.
And that, my friends, is why you should subscribe and ring the bell to make sure that you're notified of all our new uploads, because you can bet I am not done with this new game quite just yet. There is just so much to unpack. And again, just as a reminder, we upload new theories every Saturday or Sunday. We've been doing it for years now, so please support the channel. Now, if you'll excuse me, I do really gotta figure out this Jeremy stuff. It's really bothering me. There's something here. There's something here. It's the linchpin in everything that came before. This is weird, man. Also, Scott Cawthon's the villain in his own game. But again, more on that one next time.
Alright. No. No. Stop. What are we on? We are on the 30th video. So we're pretty far. Not pretty far. We're like 29% of the way there. Got there in 2 days, so that's kind of good. It's kind of good. But I've been doing this for like 4 hours now. Let's see. Yeah, 4 hours. Yeah, I think I'll get a I think I'm gonna stream. I'm not even tired. Why am I yawning? I'll see you, doggo. I will be streaming tomorrow around the same time. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream, and see you guys tomorrow. Bye.